It's not what I wanted. Let me try again. That didn't work. That didn't work. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh my. Oh boy. That's too dark. That's too dark. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Ah! Fucking hey, really? 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 God damn. Oh my god. Ah! Jesus. Jesus Christ. Hi. Hello, friends. Um, you caught me in a weird moment. Give me a sec. I was supposed to be done. I was supposed to be done before the. Ah, Jesus. Hello. That is not. I mean, it's doing cool shit to my face, but it's not really doing what I was hoping for. Um, it kind of worked. No, that's not gonna work. Um, hang on, hang on. We're trying stuff. We're trying stuff. Trying stuff. We're trying to figure things out. My face looks weird. Hi. This is kind of an unplanned thing. I apologize. Um, hello. It's been a second. How's everybody doing? Ooh, what? What is this on? Of course. Naturally. I can't even be on stream 5 seconds before it's like, oh no, it's time. It's time for the ads. The ads are happening. Fuck you, Bezos. That's not even showing. See, now it's not even showing. I wanted it to be on the screen. I wanted it to be nearish by, so that you could see the lamp thing. It's not doing it's not doing the job. I wonder, what if I did it? I'm calibrating. I'm calibrating. I'm talking about I'm yapping and I'm calibrating. Hang on. Why auto rotate is the stupidest. Here we go. I'm in an outbreak. Help! Help me! Help me! Okay. Well, it's perfect. It's perfect that the ad break is happening because I can try and figure this shit out for a second and not look like a bumbling fool while everybody's in the ad break, right? Everybody's in the ad break, right? That's how this works. Nobody can hear me struggling. Here we go. Struggling horribly. All right. Now, now it's closer, but it's still not on the camera. Everything is sticking. Everything is sticking to everything else. Okay. So let's see, let's see how that works. Let's see how that works. Is that going to show up on the screen? Kind of. Not really. No, not really. It's ambient for me, but not you. Or if you put it back here. Or if we put it back. No, because then I'm poorly lit. Yep, this lava lamp is going to be for me, not you. Sorry, guys. You will just have to You'll just have to believe that all of the light shit that's happening in this room right now is actually really awesome and all for you and not at all for me. What on earth? How? Ah, we're calibrating? Maybe? What if I put it down here? Maybe? That do anything? No, not really. It's right in my eyes. Ugh. This is what happened. See, and it's also got this mode where apparently it picks up my voice. And because it picks up my voice, it does some disco shit. But it's not consistent. I would have to be yapping nonstop. Not that that's hard. Um, in order to make it do what I need it to do. That kind of works. What if I did, what if I put it down here and propped it? If I did it that could work. Maybe. Possibly. Eh, eh. I know, it's stunning. It's stellar. You know what? I don't need your input. You hush. These are new toys, neat things that I've just finally remembered to bring downstairs. Okay, maybe no, because now it's against my mic. I don't know if that's a good idea. I can figure this out. I can figure it out. I can figure it out, everybody. If it wasn't glaring directly in my eye right now, I would almost consider this as being a win. As it is right now, it's just distracting. No. No, 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 no. Cat in a trench coat. Cat in a trench coat. What do we do? What do we do? Everybody, what do we do? What do we do? There's a song that's coming to my head right now, but I don't want to get copy striked. What if? Hang on. We might be cooking. We might be cooking, chat. It's a little bit of a balancing act. This is what happens when you have no fucking clue how to do your own job and you're just kind of hoping nobody notices. Hopefully nobody notices. Still not quite it. Still not quite working. Now I look like I'm in outer space. I almost resemble my Twitch cat. Or not my Twitch cat, my Discord icon. God, this is just not. I need to put it behind me so that it catches on the back thingy and not on me. But that is proving to be a little difficult. Son of a bitch. You know, this is the last time I buy anything nice for you, chat. Mm, that could work. I think that could work. Oh my god. Hello. Jesus Christ! No putting eye out, Raid. No. No, you have no choice. You have no choice. You're in my house now. Why not pull it? I don't have anywhere to put it. Stop shooting yourself in the face with lasers. You'll put your eye out too late. Too fucking late. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, which is a surprise because I'm always in Neff's chat, or like probably 80% of the time I'm in Neff's chat. My name is Wayward Bard. I usually just go by Bard, or that person over there who has an inconsistent stream schedule, or also Birdie or B. If you know me in person, you'll know why Birdie, but if you don't know me in person, that's fine too. Cheap, cheap motherfuckers. I'm also pulling out these cards that I brought. These cards. Hello, D. How are you doing? I mean, technically, inconstant would mean the same as semantics. Semantics. The enemy of every argument I have with my spouse. I've never heard of you in my life. I see, and I lost this. See, this is why I need to build a script because my ass can't remember anything to save anybody. Oh, hello. See, it's kind of moving. I like that. It doesn't look like that in person necessarily, but it definitely looks like I am not scary. I don't know what you're talking about. It definitely looks like better according to the camera. Hang on a second. All the shenanigans made the camera Weird. You know what? Fuck it. I don't care. Wayward Bard, Bird, Barty, Bee, that person over there. I'm a variety streamer. I primarily read on stream, but I have been known occasionally to dabble in the video games. It's been a little difficult for the last couple of years, though, because I've been in this constant state of flux where I'm moving all the time. And because I'm moving all the time, it's really hard to have a computer that, is in one place. So my rig's been in storage for the past 2 years, so I play video games on my spouse's laptop. It doesn't really stream. It doesn't like to do more than one thing at a time, unfortunately. So if I'm lucky, I can find a program that doesn't suck enough that I can play something. Most of the time, I can't though. So I read because reading is easy to do on a stream thing. I read in the public domain because I'm a scaredy cat, but I also have permission from my favorite author to read his books as long as I make sure to point out that A, they are his books, and B, I'm not getting paid by him to read his books, and C, I am not taking credit or liberties, like selling my work, my reading to anybody. You can pay for my quote unquote services, obviously. And there's ads and shit, but that's. What about deleting accounts? I tried deleting my account and they said no. I didn't say no. I said it's a bad idea. I also said that it's too late because I'm already in bed. So yeah, reading. I do the reading sometimes. I also do the yapping a lot. The yapping is like cornerstone, like of the pyramid. You're technically not sponsored. You are not sponsored. Is basically the thing. That is correct. Correct also. If you're no copyright lawyer, particularly considering there's no way in the nine hells that anyone actually get the story from my stream. Yeah, because you do a lot of interrupting. You interrupt yourself a lot, which is fine. Some people juggle geese. I tend to read Pomo style because if I don't, I will absolutely fail the task. Um, but I have to get to the point where I start the Pomo. That too. I have to get to the point where I start the Pomo. Otherwise, it just kind of goes. It kind of goes where it wants. So I had this really fun little deck. I don't do tarot. I don't I don't do tarot. I don't especially like tarot. I respect people who hustle, so I can understand the reason for it, but I have a long history as a person who previously worked in a metaphysical store of just not being a fan of the use of tarot for anything other than ooh, pretty pictures. I love pretty pictures, but I don't want to use it for the things that they use it for. So, what I use instead, hello? How rude. Can't you tell I'm busy? Can you not? Please. There we go. I have a couple decks, but I do basic draw, usually 1 to 3 cards. I call it tarot. I'll do the tarots. Yeah. Um, I am definitely of the mind where I've seen better fortune telling of people like spitting into a cup and then swirling it around that way. Yeah, and tarot. You got to pronounce that last T, otherwise, you can't effectively piss off everybody. You only piss off about 80%. I use these wonderful little cards. They are, hopefully it comes up on the screen properly and it's not, oh, there, look at that. It auto-corrected. Ain't that nice? The Heroes Planner is a great little online service. There it goes. Great little online um producer of fine gifts. They primarily work in um, tools of journaling and things like that, and I think their shit is super neat. You should look them up. I'm still not sponsored, but they have a limited run. They kind of put it out every so often, which is an assorted deck rather than a specific category deck. So I grabbed the assorted deck next time I could. Last time I could. Oh fuck, that's the Taco Bell in it. Escapes to go to sleep because sleep never actually happens, and is tired for once. Bravo, bellissima. We're glad for once that the sleep has come. Nighty night. Everybody give Cozy a big hug and honk you in the chat. Tell everybody good night, Cozy. Go sleeps, Cozy. So I'm going to draw a card for some people who are actually chatting. I did see Neff, so I'm going to give you one, Neff, right out the back. All right, pick one, Neff. Which one do you want me to grab? Which one do you want me to grab? Too bad I'm going to pick one for you. You're not in the room, so I get to make that choice. Here we go. Find out what's popular. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to try that again. Find out what's popular with the younger generation. Find out what's popular with the younger generation. That's your side quest. The quote on the bottom says, "Trick or tweet, smell my feet, give me something good to eat." It's accredited to no one because it is a universal thing. It's the numbers between 5 and 8. Don't you fucking start with me, sir. Don't you, little cryptid, bring that shit into my chat. I love Emily Autumn so much. I love her so much. I found her when I was found her music when I was like, I want to say 17. So a million years ago, obviously. Um, and, and, uh, she's great. I love her stuff. That's so neat. I'm jelly. I'm jelly for all the right reasons. Let me pick you a card, D. This is also a redeem. I am totally pimping my redeem. I'm totally pimping my redeems now because I don't get nearly enough redeems. Aside from the standard ones, and usually it's Cozy who requests some form of me. So your side quest, D, and I think you'll appreciate this one. Your side quest is to read a book while curled up in bed. Read a book while curled up in bed. The quote on the bottom is "Happiness is a warm puppy" by Charles Schulz. Happiness is a warm puppy. I do need to finish that book I have next to me. Well, good. Now you have a reason because it's a side quest. And if you are in, everybody hydrate. Take a sip, sip. Everybody stretch. Do I even have? I drank all my drink. Don't make me go back upstairs. It's like 3 flights. She heard me. She heard me say her name and she had to come. Normally she just puts me on in the background and lets me yap her to sleep. All right, dustbin. Dustbin, I like yours. Your side quest is to send someone a card or a letter. Or a letter or a card. Send someone a letter or a card. Small cheer and great welcome makes a merry feast. William Shakespeare. Willie S. Billy the Kid. Barda's best friend. Yay, best friend. Best friend. I'll do some actual yapping in a second. Now it's just me being silly and also kind of warming up the flaps, if you will. Good to warm up the flaps. So I gave one to D. I gave one to Dustbin. I gave one to Neff. I need to give one to Azzy. And I need to give one to Z, even though Z should be asleep. So I'll give Z theirs first. I like this one. I like this one. Z, your side quest is to write a self-love note. Write a self-love note. Sometimes you need a little wistful, excuse me, well, that would have actually made it better. Sometimes you need a little wishful thinking just to keep on living. Misato Katsukari. Excuse me, Misato Katsuragi. That is the proper one. So, write yourself a love note and post it in the side quest folder in the Disky I am typing on a keyboard that is not plugged in. We call that ASMR. Not really. Beep beep. I have a digital folder of the assignment deck I can email to you. Yeep. Then it went away before I could finish all. Unfortunately, too big to send over Discord if you'd like, and I have some other little Emily Autumn digi thingies I can send you. I will absolutely do that. I will absolutely do that for you. So that sounds great. Especially if it's like a Google Drive folder. Do like those. Azzy, are you still here? If not, you'll just have to read this after. Read this after. You'll have to look at this after in the VOD. Azzy, your side quest is learn how to draw a brain teaser or optical illusion. Beep beep. Come on, camera. Learn how to draw a brain teaser or optical illusion. That's going to be a fun one. It's quotes. Why, sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. The White Queen from Alice Through the Looking Glass. Big fave again. Might read that one on stream. I don't know if I've read Alice on stream. I was reading Robin Hood, and then I got super busy with a lot of random ass shit that was happening, which I need to come back to because I mean it's a collection of stories. It's not a linear story, which is also nice. Um, so that was Azzy's. Anybody else want a card? If you want one and you're hesitant for me, oh, words, words and things. Hesitant to ask right now. You can always ask me a little later. Using the redeems. Got a bunch of redeems. Some of them actually work. All of my sound redeems are off because I don't know how to make the elements work. Do you need some sodium carbonate? Bicarbonate? I don't know where I have it in the house. I'm trying to think. Where would I have that? I will have to think. Anyway, that's enough cards for now. That's enough cards for now. My lava lamp is still warming up. This is the first time I've turned it on since I got it. So it still needs some maybe. How dare you? What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Rude? Am I coming in okay? Did it cancel the stream? It did that to me last time. It did that to me last time. Thank goodness. I was in the middle of having a good old warm up of stuff to talk about. I actually found a topic. It took me a second of just rambling about fucking nothing before I was able to find a train of thought I wanted to go through. And I finally did, and it was good. And I was yapping and yapping away, and I'm looking at my counter in the corner. I'm like, why is there nobody in here? I know there's at least 1 or 2 people in here, but nobody's saying anything. The last thing I saw was Cozy saying rip in the corner. And I thought she was mentioning it because of what I was saying, because it was topical. But it turns out it's because the stream broke. So I probably spent 20 minutes just talking to myself in an empty ass room, which is what you should be getting used to doing anyway if you want to do this for any amount of actual time. Um, 20 minutes talking about this topic, completely forgot everything I was saying because I don't keep track of my thoughts at all. It's part of the problem. Um, and 20 minutes. 20 minutes last time, thank goodness. 20 minutes of me just talking about a topic I finally grabbed a hold on and ran with and felt good about running with because I had enough to say about it. Ah, how stressful. but I was able more or less to trace back my thoughts enough to like keep going on it, thankfully. Um, it was specifically on how, even though me personally, I've had like a bunch of stupid jobs over the course of my rather hapless existence. Even though I've had a lot of jobs, even though none of them have been very long, I can say with confidence that I know a little bit about everything. Work wise, anyway. I've been an assistant manager at a department store. I've done food delivery for pizza, for coffee, for pastries. I've done driving of all kinds. I've done customer service work at a bookstore, at a drive-through, at all this other places. So I know a lot about a lot of shit. And I'm also a nerd who likes to learn shit. So I also know just a lot of shit about a lot of shit. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I would do really good at like a trivia night sort of situation. I know a lot of weird shit about a weird shit. Oh, anyway. Um, so I've been talking about that, and I talked about how um I had found that one of my favorite musicians had released an EP like recently, and how I just gushed about that for like 45 minutes straight because I love her music and it's just a phenomenal piece of music. I won't go into it again because it was a lot. Um and I don't want to cry again because that was also something I was doing was just getting caught in my fifis because of how just thinking about the music and the message behind it were just so powerful and moving for me. Um, and I had mentioned that I had found out that Joy Williams had also put out some music recently. For those of you who are not familiar with Joy Williams, she was part of the duo known as the Civil Wars. She and her previous musical partner had a very unexpected uh, breaking apart of the band, and they both went on to do their own things. And it crushed me to death because they were one of my favorite bands at the time, and I absolutely loved and adored their music. And it's very likely they will never collaborate again, which makes me so sad because I really love their music, and I've been trying to find a niche that filled that musical taste for me, but I haven't done a good job, and or I haven't really found anything that quite fits the bill. I did find Delta Ray. Delta Ray is also a really phenomenal band. I've seen them 4 times live. I love them so much. And I have listened to music by Joy Williams, and why am I forgetting his name? Oh, that's gonna bug me. I've listened to both of their music endeavors separately, but Joy hadn't put anything out in a while because she'd been doing some stuff and things behind the scene, like getting divorced from her husband who cheated on her. What a guy. But she just literally just like within the past month or two released a song, a collaborative song with another musician, and it's like a lovers type song where they're singing to each other about how, um, things there's a lot of work you have to put into the relationship, and in order to show how invested you are, you'll stay and you'll be the proof. That's the name of the song. Beautiful song. Lovely, lovely message. Both versions that I listen to, like the stripped version and the standard version, are beautiful versions. I could easily listen to either of them. And I did at least 3 or 5 times, maybe even 12 times. I lost track after 25. But for all 30 times that I listened to it, every single time after the 50th time got better. You get what I'm saying? Good. It's a good song. And I look forward to any other stuff she does collaboratively with that particular artist. And in general, I just really like her vocal range. I love her sound. I am not a fan. Another ad? Damn it. Please stick around. I'll be here when you get back. It's only going to be 90 seconds. I gotta do them because it's otherwise I have to make y'all sit through like 3 minutes of starting ads, and that's the worst. I'd rather it be only every 90 seconds, and if people are super active in chat, it kind of knocks the time spread down. Anyway, so I could talk about music forever. That's one of those reasons why my handle is the way that it is. But I won't bore y'all with me just yapping forever about it. Um, my spouse is currently out of town. Twitch doesn't care about us, they care about the ads. They sure ass do. They sure as hell do. My spouse is out of town for a week, as is my new roommate slash stepson. And those of you who know what's going on behind the scenes know how I might feel about that whole thing. We had a bit of a hard day right before she left. Like literally it was with the hard day was yesterday and it had bled over from the day prior, so it's kind of like two hard days back to back and then she left this morning. So, and I was not awake at all. And there was a lot of sounds happening, which was waking me enough to up enough to hear the sounds and be disrupted, but not enough to um fully pull me out of sleep. It was this weird sort of blurry awake, not quite asleepness. And I don't even think she said goodbye before she left, which made me a little sad, but it's fine. We had talked a little bit more before both going to sleep. She hit the pillow and was gone, immediately. And that's very par for the course for her. She is a very, when she's tired, she fucking goes. She's out. One of her favorite things to do is to put on like soundtracks to her favorite musicals and stuff like that, or listen to a specific um, playlist record, if you will, of particularly wonderful mutual enjoyment albums that we both like. And it's a reflection of our age, really, really bad. um, and I don't know, I think I'm just a little blurry in the head right now. I'm struggling to remember the name of the bands off the top of my head. I could probably whistle, not literally whistle, but hum out the tune, but I can't remember the artists without looking it up. And I could. But the musicals are a lot easier to remember because I know all of them. Heart to heart. Heart heart by part. It's Phantom of the Opera. It's not the Sarah Brightman version, thank God, because I hate Sarah Brightman. Anybody who likes the version with Sarah Brightman, you're allowed to be wrong. So Phantom of the Opera, Cinderella, the Rodgers Hammerstein Cinderellas, to be more specific, um, Hamilton, which I actually introduced her to, and was further like, thank you for sticking around through the ads, everybody. We were talking about musicals that my spouse falls asleep to. Hamilton, which I did introduce her to originally, but then my stepson, her son, her eldest son, kind of drilled further in. Phantom of the Opera, not the Sarah Brightman version. If you like the Sarah Brightman version, you can keep that. And Cinderella, Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella. She listens to a couple versions of that one. She likes the Julie Andrews version. I've heard that one a few times. And then there's another one. I think it's a little older, maybe. Um, Personally, I am a fan of the Brandy version that was on TV, but I might be the only one who likes that version. I just thought it was great. The cast was great. Everything about the cast was great. I loved it. Um, I know there's at least one other one in there. I think at least one time I remember Into the Woods. But it's been a minute since Into the Woods. Um, Savage Garden. That's one of the bands. Savage Garden is one of the bands. And then it's what is the name of that other band? It's gonna kill me. I can't remember it. Anyway, it's so important. The important thing is, bless her little heart, bless her forever. She puts it on and then she's immediately down. Like before the first track is even halfway through, she's asleep. So who gets to listen to the whole album? Me. And I don't even care most of the time because especially when it's the musicals, I know them well enough that they kind of just filter into the back of my brain. Good night, dustbin. Have a good sleeps. Everybody say good night to dustbin. Um, but the first time she put on Truly Madly Deeply Savage Garden, I cracked up really bad and kept her from falling asleep. And we giggled about that for a little bit because that is like that whole album is kind of a reflection of our young adulthood. And um we agreed that if we had ever had like a proper ceremony, because we eloped. Of course, of course. That is perfectly fine, Neff. You do whatever you need to do. Again, I appreciate you trusting me with your audience. I will take good care of them. I can't promise that most of them are even fully aware of me at this point. Some of them have probably put you on the background and are like, who the hell is this yapper in the background? That doesn't sound like Neff. Um, well, that's fine. I think I will pick up since it's the first thing that popped up on my e-reader when I popped it open. Ooh, I have an update. Cool, I should do that real quick. It might turn off my reader though, so I'm gonna have to wait while it does that. So the books that we have been reading on stream as of last time. Hey baby, how are you doing? We were just talking about you. What's the other band that you listen to that isn't Savage Garden? I already mentioned the musicals that you read that you listen to, but I can't remember the other band. I know there's a couple others. I know Queen is on there. I didn't mention Queen because everybody knows Queen. I didn't have to mention Queen, but I can't remember the other one. So if you remember it, and you will because it's in your rotation, please feel free to say so, but if not, that's fine too. You're just here to listen to me yapping because I'm not there to yap at you directly. Uh, so we were reading Robin Hood. We were reading a collection of Charles Lint's it was the best of Charles Lint, and I was reading from a fanfic that I wrote with some buddies of mine, what feels like a million years ago. But um, I can't pull Bush. That's what it is. It's Bush. I remembered as soon as I saw it. As soon as I saw it. I know you do listen to Wallflowers and Everclear. I can't recall when it was recently, but I do recall Bush pretty recently, and I do know Savage Garden was like maybe yesterday or even the day before. Um, and I was mentioning that. I was mentioning how you are really, really quick sleeper, and that I'm usually the one who ends up listening to the soundtracks or the albums while you're dead asleep next to me. Um, can you just do it? Can you do the update already? Thank you. Do not turn off your e-reader, it says. So I could read my silly little fanfic. Um, I think that'll be the easiest one. I don't have to go hunting around for the other ones. You know, I came here to have a good time. Well, you know what? That was your first mistake. So I think I will read from that since I have it and it popped up immediately, unless I can get Robin Hood to boot up, in which case I'll pick up Robin Hood and you can listen to me uh, absolutely butcher an English accent and completely forget all of the voices that I did the last time I read it. Or I could go and find the Charles Dillon one and then have to remember where I left off with that. And I think I did accurately lock in on Storygraph where I left off. So that shouldn't be too hard to find. I also have a very short collection of short stories upstairs, but I would have to run up and get it. Also not a problem, if that's what people feel like listening to. But I'm just as well reading my silly little fic. I think I could just do one whole section of that and then see how I feel after. I think that's what I'm gonna do. As soon as this sucker boots back up. I do admittedly, I do like the quality of light coming in this room right now with the lava lamp, even though it's not on screen, and with my little um, LED star constellation thing. It took a second to get it to work properly. It's still not perfect, as you can tell, but it does the job for now until I play balancing act with a few things. I realized today, as I was frantically looking around my house this morning before I was about to leave to go to physical therapy, that I didn't know where a charger was, like a phone charger. And it's because, as it turns out, we have exactly two. One of them is actually the cord for the laptop to keep the laptop working, and the other one is a dedicated one that mostly lives upstairs. And as well as a battery, like a loose battery, like a USB compatible battery pack thing. I just got a little power pack that's attached to like a flashlight slash fan, but it wasn't charged. So I wasn't able to use it. And I'm learning this as I'm running around because I need to use my phone to get my bus pass in order to get to and from the PT in time. Since none of that was functioning, um, I decided to go ahead and cancel my PT for the day. But since I was already up and about, I figured, okay, well, I might as well do some shit that I've been meaning to do for a little while. One of them was to go to the thrift store and pick up a couple things, also including the battery packs because we needed the battery packs. Now we have like five of them. Not all of them have the same grade of power producing, but one of the ones that I grabbed doesn't properly sit against the electrical outlet like most of them do, and you have to prop your phone against the wall behind it if you're lucky and you have a wall behind it. That it can be propped against, like a countertop even, because if it's just regular one against the baseboard, you're lucky if the cord reaches far enough. I did find a proper plug into the wall, several inches of cord, charging port thing that lays flat on a surface, and I'm so excited to use that. And that's what's then next to me holding this little funky light together, working for me. It has two ports. I'm so excited. It has two whole ports. Um, but it doesn't plug into the laptop, so it's not like a USB port bank, which I also need. That'll come later. Got that and a couple random things that I felt were needed. Can't wait to show them to my spouse when they get back. I think they will like my choices. And if they don't, that's fine. They're not all for you. Let me pull up the thingy and let me switch gears, and then we can do some reading, shall we? This is the only downside. I have to unplug all of the things that make using the laptop easier for me down here, like the mouse, which is a USB mouse. Um, and it's a wireless USB mouse. I could use the regular mouse, but I still would have to plug it in. So I have to use the touchpad. And in addition to that, I can't use the keyboard because the keyboard is a separate one from the laptop. If I were to leave the laptop flat, then I could use that, but it's not. It's on a thingy to hold it up at a better angle. So I have to touch things and poke things and go from there. Where was I going with all this? Oh yeah, switching gears. Give me just a second to do that, and then we'll read. How's everybody's day been? Oh, I see some of my favorite ASMR streamers are going on right now. Dang it. I'll have to pop in on them later after I'm done, because they will sure as hell be going on longer than I will. Okie dokie. Focus. Your focus needs more focus. Switching gears. Changing lanes. Going places that I don't know where I'm going. Complete. Here we go. Switching categories. That's what I'm doing. Edit stream info. Now read this. I can hear my other roommate in the other room yapping. Righty. There goes that. I know there's like a chapter thing I can hit, but I can't remember where it is. Can I do it on this side? Maybe. Nope, not the right one. Go away. Where? Where is it? Oh, for Pete's sake, I might just give up. Okay, I dozed off for a second for my phone to go off. Sir, on my phone suggested my own Twitch chat to me. That's hilarious. I heard you like cozy, so we put some cozy in your cozy so you can have a cozy time while you're listening to cozy. Tiger Bobby. I can't find it. I give up. Used to be. Maybe I can do it on this side if I just look a little harder. Is it worth it though? Maybe not. I don't know. I don't care that much. Fuck it. Whatever. We're gonna read. We're gonna read some stuff. Here we go. Bye! Okay. Time to set a pomo so I don't forget what I'm doing. And for those who, the deep lore drop, last time I tried to get this pomo app to work on my phone, I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working when I closed the screen. It's because I didn't have the settings on correctly. Alrighty, we're not gonna do 15 minutes. Maybe we should do 15 minutes. Is 15 minutes a good amount of time? Hmm. I can't decide. And I'm struggling to find the button that gives me the option to change it. Where is it? Alright. Reading 15 minutes 4 times. Yeah, I think that's a good. Actually, that's perfect. 15 minutes 15, 35, 15, 30, 45, 60. That's an hour. Yeah, I think we can do that. I think that works. Here we go. Couple seconds delay. Do forgive me. Chapter 6, Episode 4, Under the Sea. Chapter summary. The team heads up to the Wisconsin Dells for a little R&R, but work just has a way of catching up with them. Jesse comes across a Managishi, a water monster with a grudge, whose river is being dammed and is trying to get revenge. With a third body in the car, and with Ep sitting up hurting more than it was worth, Ben had opted to lie in the back seat while Claire drove them to their temporary vacation spot. He knew without asking that she'd suggest the place as a way to pick up his spirits, but Ben couldn't help feel guilty that he was preventing her from picking up another job. Truth be told, he wasn't exactly looking forward to the Dells either. It wasn't as though he'd be able to swim or anything, but people watching had its appeal, as did seeing her enjoying herself. On the trip up, he mostly slept, fading in and out as Jessie and Claire made small talk. They still had plenty of money left on his card to pay for a hotel, but it conveniently became less of a problem when Jessie produced enough money to pay for 4 nights from his wallet. Ben was really too tired to argue over the ethics, especially considering most of his money had been earned in less than moral ways over the past 7 years. Jessie was happy to pay for the place, even though he was skeptical about what kind of, quote, beach, end quote, there would be in the middle of nowhere. Still, for the first time since lighting up in the woods, things felt back to normal. This is what people have to do around here. They couldn't just move to the ocean for a real beach, he said, grinning at Claire. It'd been her idea, after all. Claire smirked pleasantly at him, then shared the look with Ben as the elevator slowed to a stop on their bottom floor. You grow up here, you learn to cope. Here, of course, meant the Midwest, where a huge chunk of the natives had never even seen the ocean, or a mountain, or anything much bigger than a big hill covered in trees. Despite it only being a few days past the turn into spring and a bit cold outside, the air that greeted them off the elevator was warm and balmy and hinted of chlorine. Claire had her knacky short knacky. Claire had her khaki shorts and a raw cotton peasant shirt on over her bathing suit. It was enough like summer for her. Besides, Ben added, it's not warm enough for the beach yet. We'll make it out that way when it warms up, maybe, if there's a job that way. The sudden swell of voices came at them like a wave. Whoa! Jessie stared. The room itself was overwhelming, like an enormous plasticine mix of playground and tropical beach. But that wasn't what made him stare. What made him stare was the people. Shit, didn't even think there were this many people in Wisconsin. Claire also stared, a little wide-eyed. It's not even the busy season. Their path down to the sandy stretch of man-made lagoon was full of stopping, weaving, and avoiding too many small children than should be legal in one place. Even the beach was littered with people, beach towels, coolers, and bar cocktail drinks. She briefly thought of the horror that would have been a janitorial job here. Oh, watch it! A surprised but friendly middle-aged woman chirped up at Claire before the younger woman stepped on a partially devoured bologna sandwich. She grabbed it out of the way with a short apology and headed toward the line of garbage cans up by the path. What looked to be her teenaged son, soaking wet and dusted with sand, smiled up at Claire and moved a bit of the family's beach towels. Not a lot of room, sorry, he said with his mother's distinct Wisconsin accent. You're not lying, Jessie said, shaking his head. What's going on? Is there a... What was it that could bring so many people to Wisconsin? Is there like a thing in town? There wasn't anything in the newspaper, Ben commented, brows knitted together. A small group of children raced out in front of them. Ben stopped on a dime, but his face went tight as the muscle contractions sent pain shooting through the nerves in his chest and abdomen. Maybe I missed it or something. Who knows? Claire said lightly. She spent many a summer vacation here with her family before everything changed. Maybe there's a family reunion here or something. She dropped her towel and peeled off the wispy overshirt and kicked off her flip-flops. Jessie's head snapped right around, no longer caring how many kids were running and screaming around them. He grinned. Bikini, huh? Not very angelic of you. Claire whipped at him with her t-shirt. Ben was also staring, though he was a lot less vocal about the thoughts suddenly racing through his head. What? She looked at both of them, her brows pinched a little over a wrinkled nose. Claire's sign of indignation. It's the only suit I have. No, it's... Ben stammered out, caught somewhere between trying to reassure her and showing a decent amount of concern as to how much of her skin was showing. There were other women in bikinis, but those women weren't Claire. It's fine. You look fine. Yeah, I've got no problem with it, Jessie said, winking before he tugged off his own shirt and dropping it on the towel. Let's see if we can find any empty water. Claire smirked a little at Jessie's wink, then turned her attention to Ben. Her thumbs hooked in her shorts, and she pushed them down to her feet. You sure you're not coming? A little weightlessness might help. Ben gave a little lift of his shoulders, then shook his head. When he smiled, it didn't quite touch his eyes. I'll watch. Don't go not having fun because of me. Claire caught the half-dead smile and looked at him softly. You could wear your shirt, mate. If you're worried about the bruises, Jessie pointed out. Oh, I'm more worried about getting kicked in the ribs by some 10-year-old's foot, Ben replied, brows arching slightly. Besides this, he gestured with his hands, not a proud watergoer's body. I look like a friggin' Casper had a baby with a chia pet. Claire snickered a little at that, and put her hand on his shoulder. Ben, look around. It's just Wisconsin. She leaned in a little closer, secretive and teasing. They all look like Casper. His shoulders got a warm squeeze. Claire gave him a reassuring smile and slipped away, glancing at Jessie to follow. We'll try and scare some space up for you, Jessie said with a sympathetic smile before following after her. With their backs turned to him, Ben finally allowed himself to frown and sigh in disappointment. He really did like swimming. It had been years since he'd stepped into water deeper than his knees. Stupid vampires, he thought bitterly, scouting around for a beach chair to lie in. Scaring up some clear water might have been the only option. The lagoon was packed with floating rafts and flailing children, couples canoodling, and a few scattered elderly folk looking just about ready to be left alone. The danger of wayward feet was very real, Claire realized as she waded to her hips and was nearly caught by one flopping by. Not going to get a lot of swimming done here. She glanced at Jessie, then dipped under the water just enough to resurface, pushing her hair back in front in the process. Meanwhile, the teenager with the Wisconsin accent tipped his head at Ben when he settled nearby. "Hey, my baby sis had that chair a few minutes ago. Just warning you, she was covered in peanut butter." That time the smile was real, though he felt a tug in his heart at the memories that filled his mind. "Nothing I ain't used to, kid, but thanks," Ben said, carefully pulling the towel hanging around his neck down and tossing it lightly over the length of the chair. It took him twice as long to ease into it, his face pinched the entire time until he finally managed to find a comfortable horizontal position. "So where are you visiting from? You here for the story?" the kid said, propping up. Without even thinking, Ben sat up. Again, he had to fight off a wince. "What story?" The kid snickered. "This here's the Dell's first haunted water park. They just announced it over New Year's." Ben's brows arched. So that's why the place was suddenly so crowded. Tourists. It took all his effort not to scowl. It was very possible the so-called story was a hoax meant to scare up some extra money during the dry season. But sometimes the stories had a lot more truth than people realized. "Never thought a water park would end up haunted," Ben said slowly, hoping to coax more out of the kid. "I hear it's a kid that drowned here when the place first opened," he said, stepping forward. "They kept it all quiet, and that's why he's kicking up a fuss now, tugging people's hair, whispering in their ears, all that poltergeist stuff." There was no stopping the scowl that pulled across Ben's face. Another poltergeist. At least this one sounded mostly harmless. "Sounds just like a story to me," Ben said. Still, there was one thing that sounded interesting. "What's it whispering?" The kid's grin lengthened. Clearly, he put as much stock into the haunted hotel story as he did the scary houses at the carnival. "Come to the water," or some silly shit like that. He even wiggled his fingers for dramatic effect. Ben made a show of scoffing. "That's all? How's that scary? I've seen scarier stories on the CW." The kid rolled his eyes and laughed. "It's not. That's the point. It's all a marketing gig." "Sounds like," Ben agreed, with a nod, his eyes searching for the two familiar faces in the sea of strangers floating on the surface of the water. "Looks like it's working, too." Looking like she did, Claire got a lot of attention from the younger male population, which didn't bother Jessie until the splashing started getting a little out of hand. "Hey, hey, we gotta breathe, guys," he said, raising a hand as he got between Claire and the little gang. Despite the way she cordially smiled and went along with the gaggle of adolescents, mainly because she had nowhere else to go in the crowded lagoon, Claire was grateful for the blockade. She could handle a lot of things, but kids weren't one of them. They were like exotic animals to her sometimes. "Yeah, time out or something," Claire muttered. She swiped at her face with her palm and shook water out of her left ear. Everything was a little muddled. "How about a game, then?" one of the older boys called out. He appeared to be the closest thing to a ringleader, because all the other boys immediately went quiet and looked back up at him. The boy put a hand through his wet blonde hair, his blue eyes flashing with mischief. "Marco Polo?" Jessie gave a snort. "Yeah, kid, we ain't 12. You go for it, though." The boy made an ugly look at Jessie, turning his eyes to Claire. "Come on, it'll be fun." Claire looked at Jessie, smirking, then back to the kid. "Right, wander around a crowded pool with her eyes closed." That sounded like a great idea. "Next round, sure." Claire didn't exactly have a normal teenagehood. She had no idea how to deal with this situation, so she stayed in her default politeness. "Your loss," another boy called out. They immediately started roughhousing again, though there looked to be some orchestration to how it was being done, because one minute they were all pushing and shoving each other, and then the next the older boy was roughly shoved straight into Claire. He seemed to be somewhat ready for it, given the placement of his hands as he fell into her chest first. Her eyes widened. The moment seemed to slow in time. There was no mistaking the press of a wet but warm hand covering up most of her breast, and one at her hip just over the surface of the water. A momentary snap of a memory forgot that this was a kid, in fact. Claire snapped at his wrist and twisted him sharply around until his knuckles grazed the top of his shoulder blade. A beat later, she shoved him away with her huffed breath. Jessie was only halfway to Claire when it was over. except there was a flash of maroon that came away with the kid, and out of the corner of his eye he could tell Claire was showing a lot more flesh than before, and before, quickly covered her with both arms over her chest. "Give it here, you wanker," he snapped, grabbing the kid's arm and yanking it back. The kid dropped the top immediately, and it floated to the surface, bobbing with the motion of the water. As he snatched the bikini top back, Jessie added, acting like that, "Your hand's the only thing your dick'll ever see." But the kids hardly heard Jessie, already tumbling over themselves with laughter and congratulating before they headed off into the masses. However, before Jessie could get back to Claire, he felt a very strong grip settle on his ankles beneath the water that tugged him suddenly and sharply down. As if Claire wasn't gaping enough, she stood frozen for a half-second, wide-eyed at Jessie's sudden disappearance under the water, before her brows pinched hard in the middle, and shouted angrily at his shape, "Not the time, Jessie!" Sure, he'd lose his footing right then. All sound should have ceased when he went under, or at least gone muted. What he heard instead was the sound of childish laughter, echoing over and doubling. Everything was dark and heavy. Then, mere inches from his face, and appearing out of nowhere, was the face of a child, her skin and her hair milky white, and her eyes strangely large with tilting pupils. Her lips curved in a wide smile, flashing pointed teeth. Her mouth didn't move outside of the too wide to be human grin, but he heard a voice as clear as day weaved in with the continuous laughter. "You will return to the source, or you will die." Jessie bucked away, gasping a lungful of water before he broke the surface. He sputtered, his heart pounding. He dug at the water, trying to find whatever that thing was. Claire was ready to greet him with one of her best glares, but it went unappreciated because of all of his flailing. She adjusted her cover on herself so one arm still crossed over her chest, and the other could snatch back her top. "Having problems?" she asked with no small amount of bite, then looked at her untied piece of wet fabric like it was a puzzle box, unsure of how she was supposed to get decent again without becoming much more indecent in the process. Turning around at the words, Jessie's wide eyes met hers. Then he grabbed her arm. "We gotta get out of this water. There's something in the water," he said, low and urgent. "Wait, just hang on." Claire's eyes went wide as she suddenly lurched forward by the arm, thankfully the one that wasn't providing her only desperate cover. But the urgency seemed to goad her legs somewhat clumsily through the water after him, even though all she wanted to do was pull away. By the time they reached the ankle-deep water, she'd earned her fair amount of stares, her cheeks blazed enough to turn the water on her face to steam. "What do you mean? There's something in the water?" she sniffed at him, though quietly and not before pulling her arm away from him to fold across her chest once more. So much for being discreet. By the time they got to the imitation shoreline, Ben was already there, his face drawn and concerned. The moment he saw her strap-free shoulder, his eyes widened, and he'd quickly thrown his towel over her, if only to avoid them being thrown out for indecent exposure. "What the hell is going on?" There was something grabbed me," Jessie said, folding his arms. He shivered in the now too cold air. "It looked like a kid, except fucking creepy." Ben's expression darkened. "Come on, let's get out of here," he said, already leading them in the direction of the elevator, which would take them to the dressing rooms. "And you're sure you weren't hallucinating?" Ben asked him once more, when they were back in their hotel room again. Jessie had told him what had happened while on the way back to the GTO, but he'd been panicked and unable to formulate proper words. Now that he'd had a smoke and a few minutes to collect himself, he told them the whole experience in the finer details. Claire seemed honestly uneasy at the description of the creature, but Ben had a pretty good feeling that it was just a mental projection of some sort. There was no way something that ugly could have just been walking around in a water park without causing mass panic by anyone who could see it. "Fuck you, I'm not crazy," Jessie snapped. The cigarette had calmed his nerves, but that just left the anger behind. Anger that he'd been accosted on his vacation. Anger that something had threatened his life. Anger that he couldn't have one moment of normalcy, not since he'd met these two. Why would I even hallucinate something like that? Ben put his hands up in a sign of defense. "Just wanted to clarify. We did find you in the woods smoking dope, after all." Maybe not was not the time to joke, he thought to himself afterward. I've just never heard of a creature like that. Claire sat, Claire sat on the bed, cross-legged as always, tapping away at the laptop in front of her. How do you say the eyes looked? Like a cat? No, like a fish, like big fish eyes, Jessie said, taking a breath and turning from Ben. And what in fuck's name is the source? Could be a lot of things. Claire was having trouble picturing this whatever it was without keeping the shutter down. Ben attempted to get up from his chair using his arms to lift his body weight. They ached, but it hurt a lot less than trying to sit up the regular way. So much for a marketing ploy, Ben said, mostly thinking out loud as he found his computer and brought it back to the table. The kid at the park told me all the thing did was tug hair and pinch people. It's only been happening recently, though. Something must have changed. Or the other people just didn't want to admit to seeing a psycho fish girl, Jessie said, pacing between the two of them. We need to talk to the staff, people who know what was really going on here. Claire glanced up at him from the blue haze of her computer monitor screen. Pacing didn't normally make her nervous, but Jessie was obviously wound tight. She rolled her lips and looked at Ben, then back down at the screen. They're only gonna tell guests what they've been told to say. Place is so big. I'll go in as a lifeguard tomorrow. Could you please just sit? Her eyes were on Jessie with a pleading edge. Biting back the urge to snap at her, Jessie sat down hard in his armchair. Let's just get out of here then. If it's not doing anything, it's not a problem. Ben looked up sharply. Dude, we don't know if it has or hasn't yet. We gotta look it up. There's a process. Yeah, I've seen the process, and it takes too long when I've got some unknown countdown on my head. We've all been there several times. Claire started in softly, still typing, then looked up over at him. She paused for a beat before adding, just leaving doesn't fix anything. Not for the people here, and definitely not for you. She looked back down at the computer. There's plenty of things that just like to follow you. I'd like to see them follow me to Thailand, Jessie said, hunching over in his seat. Ben's jaw tightened behind the screen, and this time he didn't look up as he barked out, then go to Thailand. I'll make you a shopping list of stuff to bring back while the grown-ups are at work. Jessie sat up with a scowl. Oh, yeah? Grown-ups get their asses handed them by vampires too? Claire let out a long breath, then shook her head. None of this is helping, she said calmly, doing her best to ignore the way she had bristled. They'd had their share of ass-kicking for sure, but it wasn't the nature of the beast, and that didn't even include the pang of protectiveness. You're absolutely right, Claire, Ben said briskly. How about the two of you get to investigating since Harry Potter here can't sit still, while I start researching what our timorous beastie might be? Claire looked at him oddly. Jessie pushed himself to his feet again, not even looking Ben's way. Fine, works for me. Let Barbara Gordon do her thing. He headed for the door. Claire looked between the both of them, feeling very much like a piece of stretched rubber. It lingered on Ben, a silent inquiry written on her face, wondering how she'd ended up being put in this position. In the end, it was best she keep an eye on the rookie, regardless of his kung fu magic or whatever the hell it was he had. With a sigh, she closed her computer and got up to follow after him. Ben watched them go, once again feeling bitterness burning in his chest. Jessie's words had shot through him like an arrow to the heart, but he wasn't about to walk away from a job. It hurt not to be able to go work at full capacity, and it and to have even allowed himself to get hurt in the first place. 7 years, and sometimes he still felt like an amateur. Right, he muttered out loud, returning back to the screen. Just a second, I need to make sure my pomo didn't go off. Oh, it did. We're gonna have a little 5-minute break. I'm actually gonna run upstairs real quick and grab some water because I realize I did not grab any. So I will be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Couple things. One, turns out my water was here this whole time. It was just out of my reach. So I didn't even have to go upstairs. Dang it. Oh well. Good to get a little movement in, right? However, I did grab some tea and a little sugar-free lemonade that I could drop in. Give it a little bit more flavor. Not that I don't enjoy just plain tea. It's just nice to have a little flavor sometimes. Come on, camera. I know you're doing your best, but you could do better. Oh, boy. Ooh. Mm. Alright. Just waiting for the timer to flip over, and then we'll pick up back where we left off. It has a little meow timer on it when it goes off. Because I have it on D&D right now. Oops. It didn't do it, which is sad. Oh well, it's fine. Flicky flicky back to the right screen. Okay, that was weird. Someone outside my window just shouted shut up for no reason. I'm sure they weren't talking to me. That was the thing about big crazy hotel resorts or any big crazy places of business that held their particular interests. Upper management rarely had a firm hold over the lower level employees and it was easy to slip through the cracks, especially for an hour or two. 2 days, tops, but Claire was hoping this wouldn't drag out that long. The incident at the pool still left a sour taste in her mouth, and the female version of the lifeguard swimsuits she managed to snag from the linen storage on the sublevels were little more than a sports bra and a pair of thick fabric underwear. More than the bikini that failed her, but still, she was a little gun-shy. Just promise me you won't try to save some drowning kid if you don't know how, she whispered at Jessie as they headed into the employee break room, where she'd heard the shift leader was supposed to be taking his lunch. She twisted her hair into a somewhat wild ponytail and put on her best Abercrombie smile. Jessie gave a snort as they entered and said under his breath, "I'm not going near that water. That thing is still in there." Plastering on a smile of his own, he headed straight for the lone employee, a kid that looked younger than they were. "Hey man, mind if we join you?" Claire started in quickly. The lifeguard looked up from his meager lunch of ramen and a pudding cup with a smile. "Yeah, sure. I'm Mandy. This is my cousin Greg. The new guards? They told us to check looking for you." She made her smile a bit more tipped into one cheek than the other. "Unless you're busy." Nah, His eyes fluttered up to the wall clock briefly. "I'm pretty much done with my break anyway. Just let me wolf the rest of this down." "Yeah, sure, not like there's a hurry," Jesse said, his smile pleasant, though a small bit of tension discernible in his words, which earned a barely noticeable look from Claire. After a moment, Jesse added, "It's crazy busy out there, right? I've never seen a place so crowded." "Probably the craziest it's ever been during the slow season," the lifeguard replied with a laugh. "I'm kind of glad to hear they hired on some more lifeguards. It certainly felt like we were understaffed. I actually pulled 40 hours last week. That almost never happens." Claire pulled up the chair next to the lifeguard with the tip of her foot before sitting down. "What's so different this year?" The lifeguard shrugged a little, swallowing a bite of food and frowning. "There's been this rumor about some sort of drowning or whatever, but honestly, there hasn't been a drowning case here in almost 15 years. A few close calls, sure, but our team is fast, and we're all Red Cross certified." "Yeah, good thing," Jesse said, bobbing his eyebrows. "But why would a drowning make people come out? I think they'd want to stay away." "You got me, brother," the lifeguard replied with a mouthful of food, giving another shrug. "People are weird. Rumors flying, etc. I haven't really been paying that much attention to what's been said." Claire wrinkled her nose a little and sat back, slumping a bit in her chair. What, like company drama? Somebody getting sued and it's making the papers from here to Milwaukee? She put on a sarcastic grin to match her tone. No way this guy just knew there were rumors without knowing what they were about. The lifeguard took a large spoonful of the pudding and swallowed before speaking, but his brows were still knit up in a frown. He looked past them to the door, then back to them again. Claire followed the look, watching the guy closely. They're just rumors. There isn't any facts in them. Generally true with rumors, Jessie said with a smile, though if the tourists are going to be asking us questions, might help to at least know what they're saying. In the meantime, Claire pushed to her feet and casually padded to the door. She nudged it shut with a few gentle fingertips, then smiled back at the boys. Sorry, I couldn't hear anything. She smiled a little intently at the actual lifeguard and slipped back into the chair next to him. What were you saying again? The lifeguard went quiet for a minute while he picked up his bowl and slurped the last of the soup down from the ramen. With both things done, he stood, dropping the packages into the trash before bringing his bowl and fork to the sink to wash them. He kept his back to them when he spoke. They're talking about a girl who drowned, from what I had overheard, he said, his voice pensive. Something about people being pulled under? Lots of people get pulled under, though. It's just kids playing pranks. None of the lifeguards or other employees have had it happen to them, Jessie asked. We don't typically stay in the water. It's a quick in and out, usually, the lifeguard replied, putting his fork and bowl in the plastic dish rack before moving to dry his hands. Jessie sagged with disappointment. This looked like a dead end. Well, what about you? Claire tipped her head deep forward into one shoulder with an exaggerated, curious puppy look that normally got her results. Anything happen to you? Obvious tension spread across the young man's shoulders, and he looked over his shoulder at them before his eyes started up to the clock again, and he started moving to the soda machine on the far-facing wall. What do you mean? He suddenly got very twitchy. Claire's eyebrows wanted to lift, but she kept them still and even, only pressing her lips together in a casual inquiry. She also sent a quick glance towards Jessie. Well, just that. You act like you've been here a while. 4 years, the lifeguard replied, making his selection. The machine rattled before popping out a can of Sprite, which he bent at the knee to get it cracked open. He leaned back against the machine as he emptied half the can before speaking. I thought I saw something in the water a few days ago. Jessie's eyes snapped to him a little too quickly. Yeah? What did it look like? Inwardly, Claire winced, but hoped the senior lifeguard wouldn't pick up on Jessie's eagerness. The lifeguard shifted uncomfortably. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, Claire thought to herself, but instead shifted in her chair, angling herself more towards the guy. Was it that bad? His body language spoke in volumes. Maybe I just swallowed some chemicals from the water or something and it reacted with my meds. I don't know. I've got SVT, so he gave another awkward shrug and flushed. But I'm healthy. I can still swim and do my job. Don't tell anybody. Claire looked at Jessie, then back to the guard. Dude, we don't know anyone, so it's nothing. She suddenly wished she and Ben had sprung for those two-way Bluetooths so he could be looking up SVT and the meds that he came with it. Guess she just have to wait. What'd you see? It was creepy as hell, the lifeguard muttered, finishing off the drink almost reluctantly before tossing the can into recycling. Almost see-through, she was so white and her eyes were messed up. Jessie looked at Claire, his eyes widening as he gave a small nod. That sounded exactly what he had seen. At least that should be enough to convince Ben that he wasn't seeing things. It's freaky, Claire commented honestly, trying to remind Jessie to keep it all straight with her eyes. She looked back at the guard. You just saw this thing in the water? Didn't tell anyone? Did anyone else see it? That's why I think it's something to do with the chemicals and my meds, came the lifeguard's reply. He looked up at the clock again. We better get back to work. You guys still want that tour around? Jessie glanced at Claire. I mean, not if we're keeping you from something else. We can always catch up later. The lifeguard looked between the two of them. You sure? He asked, double-checking. If Paul asked you guys to come find me, I don't want to get in trouble for ditching. They messed up the schedules anyway. We weren't supposed to start till tomorrow, but, since we're all here and everything, Claire shot him a warm smile. We'll catch up with you tomorrow. Jessie smiled too. And no worries, your secret's safe, man. As he left, Jessie turned to Claire. I told you, he said with a wide grin. Ben's eyes had started to burn with how hard he'd been staring at the screen. There was only so much online that he could look up without having access to city databanks like the library and the newspaper, but he cross-referenced on creatures using the description that Jesse had provided. He came up with at least 3. The closest that came up was a river creature called a Menegishi. He would have to show Jesse a picture of one of the images he'd found to see what he thought. 10 minutes passed. As he finished printing out everything, with nothing else to do, Ben's eyes moved up to the wall clock and then to the door as if expecting them to arrive. They didn't. Ben chewed his lip. Did he make for the shower and the privacy of a locked door, or could he just get a quick jerk in with some aid while he had an empty room to himself? Technically, he could bring the laptop with him, but he was too afraid of dropping it on the tile or getting it wet. Fuck it, he thought to himself, clicking open one of his favorite sites and scrolling through until he found a video that looked good. Party scene, nice. Keeping the sound down out of paranoia, he slid his hands between the elastic waistband of his sweats and clicked the video open. Claire was pretty quiet the entire elevator ride and walked back to the suite. She was going over the game plan in her head, everything they'd learned, even if it wasn't a lot. At least it was a lead. Was admittedly looking forward to seeing if Ben had found anything interesting in his research. Focusing on the job that had fallen in their laps was a bit easier than facing the awkward tension that she and Jesse had left with Ben. She slipped the key card into the electrical slot and pushed the door-room latch down smoothly and shouldered into the room in front of Jesse. Her eyes naturally found Ben at the end of the table across the room, but only after a second or two of processing did she actually realize what she was seeing. Ghosts, vampires, demon, fish people, shocking, all of them, but none had made her eyes go as wide as they did right then. Oh God! Her cheeks flashed and burned as Claire ripped around, nearly colliding into Jesse's chest. Not really paying attention before, Jesse's heart jumped at her words. He clutched her close, ready to bolt in as... I am fumbling, Jesus. He clutched her close, ready to bolt as he took in the room, and just saw Ben and the table, looking like a mortified teenager with a bulge. He let out a laugh. You want a minute, mate? We can go. Ben cursed vividly, his entire face flushed with embarrassment and effort. Fuck, I should have used the shower. Please, God, just kill me now. He'd hit the mute button at the very least, but the damage had been done. He'd never been able to look at either of them in the eye ever again. I'm good, he croaked out. Yeah, I bet. Claire's voice was muffled into Jesse's shoulder. She was a little too mortified by the awkwardness to chance a look over at him. In a few minutes, she'd be able to fully realize the ridiculousness of the situation. At the moment, she'd rather let the heat in her cheeks burn away all images that were suddenly in her mind. And despite Ben's words, the best thing to do would probably take the mortified Claire out of the room, let the mortified Ben resettle himself. With a slight smile, Jessie shuffled them into the room, closing the door with her shifting around Claire, who had cleared her throat lightly, moved to the bed, dropping her back to the floor. So what'd you find besides busty Asian beauties? Jessie added casually. Ben closed the laptop and was currently face down in his arms. The angle hurt, but it was better than letting them see his face. He gestured with his hand at the papers in a pile on the tabletop. Look for the photo, he muffled out in reply. Photo! Someone got a photo, Jessie said, suddenly serious. He shuffled through the papers, finding a picture of a drawing. It looked pretty human, but those eyes... Yeah, that's it. That's her. One of the lifeguards said he saw something too, Claire added from her spot by the bed, her fingers rolling a cheap pencil back and forth, almost ritualistically. Hearing Jessie's tone was enough to bring Ben's eyes up, but Claire's movement out of the corner of his eyes caught his attention, and he immediately pushed his head down again. It's a Manigishi, he said. It's a river monster. Deadly pranks, etc. I think the source says it's river. A river? Does Wisconsin have a lot of rivers? Jessie said quickly. Then after a thought, why would it want me to go there? Claire stared at her computer screen for a moment, though she wasn't really seeing it. This whole area is huge for camping and fishing, she added, but not very hopefully. She went quiet for another moment, then stuck the pencil between her teeth and went to typing. Too many to narrow it down unless they all link back to one source, Ben supplied, still not looking up. Claire tapped a few more times on her keyboard. That is one big lake. She spoke around the pencil and turned the laptop around to show them both. That wasn't going to be fun. Claire had a slight irrational fear of being in boats, slight being kind of an understatement. Jessie leaned in closer to look at the screen. All right, so say that's what this thing is talking about. What do we do? How do you stop that? Couple ways, Ben said, finally forcing himself to sit upright, though he winced the whole time. Decapitation is the easiest theory, but the problem is that they're pretty fucking fast and slippery as hell everywhere except their hands and feet. It'd be like wrestling with an eel. But, he added, finding the nearby stack of papers and shuffling through them before he found what he was looking for. Here it is. There's mention of copper poisoning. If we can get a hold of copper bullets, maybe probably we could probably ice it easily. Even if we can't make a direct kill, it'll poison it to death. Copper bullets shouldn't be too hard. Give me copper, give me bullets, I'm good to go, Jessie said, looking over at him. But why did it tell me to go there? I mean, it seems stupid if it wanted to be left to keep pulling pranks. It obviously wants something, Claire added, finally abandoning her pencil chewing. Her eyes went up to Jessie, though the claim about copper and bullets was still ringing in her head. It just made her feel off. Shying away from Claire's look, Jessie nodded at Ben. Think it could recognize there was something different about me? That it might know what I can do? Your guess is as good as mine, man, Ben said, frowning slightly. He wasn't sure he liked how easy hunting had suddenly gotten with someone who could recreate anything simply by willing it into existence. We can just buy the bullets. They sell copper bullets. Jessie's jaw tightened, but he nodded. All right. Probably better that way. It's hard to get things right when I don't even know them very well. Ben's expression twisted into something closer to curiosity than distaste. So there was a method to it. That was slightly less unsettling. Can he recreate organic objects too? He suddenly thought to himself. Um, so, Ben muttered, a hand coming up to rub the back of his neck. It's late, obviously. Shall we head out tomorrow? Claire nodded quietly, rubbing her eyes with two pinched fingers, then closed her computer and scooted off the bed. I need to get this smell of chlorine off of me, she muttered, mostly to herself, already peeling off the thin zip-up hoodie over her tank top. I think then after that I'll go and get some food. Think about what you want, and then she disappeared into the bathroom. Jessie saw Ben's eyes on her the whole way, and it couldn't help but grin. You're a fucking pervert, you know that? He said as though it were a compliment. Ben's face grew hot and he scowled, one hand coming up to shove Jessie in the shoulder. Shut up! Just giving a laugh, Jessie said, watching porn right out in the open when we could be back any minute, that's some kinky shit, mate. Almost like you wanted her to see you. You'll have to send me the link sometime. It was very possible Ben's face would simply burn away, both from Jessie's laugh and the image of Claire looking at him like a deer caught in the headlights. And it had taken so much longer than normal. I hate you, he said flatly, wanting to curl up and die. Time for a little break again. Anybody who was here and hanging around, if you have a chance to do a quick stretch. Oh, look! The ads are coming. How great is that? Quick little stretch. Quick little sip sip. I almost forgot I had written that scene. I know that this is not a story written for children, obviously, and I fully expected to read that kind of content. Thank you for sticking around. After the ads were back, we weren't really saying much just yet. We just started to mutter a little bit under our breath. So I had written that. I had written that. I remember writing that section, and thinking at the time to myself, yeah, this sounds about right. Like, young guy with his friends and maybe somebody that he's kind of jazzing over, just kind of not 100% fully aware of his surroundings and making some poor choices. It seemed very possible, very likely. And I had talked with a couple of my male presenting friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's happened to me at least once, maybe a couple times." Not with a girl that I liked though, more like my mom or my sister or like my roommate. Because it's always one of those things you're kind of like, especially when you live with people that are not sharing your bed, you kind of have to fight for that kind of privacy and, making attempts to find ways for that privacy. Um, Timing not always being the best, like blocking the door, uh, and that kind of shit. Um, I've thankfully not ever had that problem because I never shared uh, a place of regular egress. I never shared a room with, like, I stopped sharing a room with my sibling when I hit puberty. Like, my folks were like, oh, it's time for you to have your own room. Here you go. Put me in my own room. But half the time she still, like, snuck into my room because she wasn't sleeping very well and she wanted to sleep next to me or something like that. Um, but I knew I was aware enough of my surroundings that that kind of stuff was under chronic paranoia about. I did not allow that kind of stuff to be um findable. Anyway, awkwardness aside, it was a fun scene to write because I wrote this piece with two other people, and we didn't we didn't typically like write out a detailed plan of attack when we would write sections. We had like your most basic of outlines, but we kind of just went for it. Like, in hindsight, I wish we had done more um probability dice rolls and stuff like that to kind of figure out how well they would do. Um but we also kind of self moderated in that way, like trying to be realistic and not trying to come off as like crazy badasses who are super good at their job. Um so there's definitely points where they pull off some pretty crazy shit, and then there's other points where they fumble really bad. Jesse has abilities because of his lore and backstory that make it easy for him to do things like replication, but he's still not 100% sure what he can and can't do, obviously. And now the pommel break is over, so let's go to another part. Let's continue. Hey, don't blame me. I'm not the reason you gotta yank your chain, Jesse said, holding up his hands in defense. I'm guessing Angel Girl could use a little something too. Ben flushed further, turning his eyes away from Jesse's face. Was that why Claire had raced off? Just the idea of it. No, 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 abort, abort, he thought furiously. Oh, God, I need a drink, he muttered out loud. Unfortunately, he'd emptied his flask about 2 nights prior, and they'd yet to stop by another liquor store. No doubt it would be closed by now anyway. He'd have to settle for beer, assuming Claire went to a store and not just through a drive-through. See, that's something I can do in my sleep, Jessie said with a grin. Give me a glass. I'll make you the poison of your choice. Ben's brows arched, and he very carefully pushed himself out of his chair, went to get a glass from the kitchen. So what'll it be? All you have to tell what I'll have. Let me try that again. Got too far ahead of myself. And I need to change the text back. Hang on a second. So what all I tell you is what's in it? Basically, consider me a bartender on speed, Jessie said, giving him a wink. Ben brought the glass to him, struggling to hold back an excited grin. Okay, so, Ben racked his brain, trying to remember the top shelf brands he'd picked up when he'd traded his car for cash. Ten Cane, Pirate XO, Planter's Gold Reserve, and, Crystal Lime, rum. Jessie laughed. Oh, fancy works. He held up the glass, concentrating. There was hardly an alcohol out there he hadn't tried. After a thoughtful few seconds, the glass in his hand was full. He handed it over, looking supremely pleased. Ben took it with hesitancy, which clearly showed on his face as he brought the glass up to his lips. His eyes immediately widened as the flavor expanded on his palate. It was perfect. Okay, I take it back, Ben said after a sizable gulp. You are now my best friend. Straightening, Jessie's grin widened, his eyes crinkling in pleasure and pride. After a beat, he took the glass for a taste of his own. Oof, thanks, mate, but I question your taste. I mean, isn't a sipping drink, my guy, Ben said, mimicking his accent. This is a drink to get you smashed in a hurry. If I drink for fun, I drink Michelob Ultras. Ah, but I think you're wanting to get in Claire's pants. You really should be giving this to her. Ben took another deep gulp, then moved his eyes to the ceiling. Yeah, she's just a friend, he muttered. She already shot you down, huh? Jessie reached over, tapping the glass to refill it. No, Ben started, then took another gulp. I haven't. We're partners. It's a bad idea, and she's Catholic. Jessie winced in sympathy. Shit, what'd you do to get laid, man? God, when was the last time he'd gotten laid? Ben couldn't even remember. His sole focus had been on hunting and trying to find his father. Any flirting he'd done had mostly been to get info on a case, not really to get a girl in his bed. Oh my God, Jessie shook his head. He frowned in thought. They weren't going to get any more tonight done, after all. Well, all right, once we got dinner and all that done, you and me are heading out to get you laid. Dude, Ben said around a snort, my ribs are broken. I can't exactly pull out all the tricks when my ribs are broken. I'm off the market for at least 6 weeks. And truthfully, he wasn't sure he could just leave Claire alone. Come on, if you were desperate enough to wank through the pain, you could stand a blowjob at least, Jessie scoffed. Wank, Ben echoed in his head, his brows knitting before his face got hot. He'd never had a wingman before. It was such a normal thing to have. The world had gotten so strange now that he'd picked up additional partners. Pretty sure if I go cruising for chicks, I should offer them a favor or two in return. I'm not out to be a dick. Jessie shrugged. If we go cruising for a different kind of chick, he said, imitating Ben, then I've got plenty of cash, and you wouldn't need to hurt a rib. What hookers? Ben sputtered, his eyes going a little wide. Jessie hushed him, but his uncertainty crept into his face. Well, yeah, come on, don't tell me you've never paid for it. I've never had to, man, Ben said with the slightest smirk. The idea that Jessie had only slept with girls he had to pay made him feel a little better. Maybe he wasn't as suave as he pretended to be. In case you weren't aware, I'm kind of a big deal, says the man who can't remember when he had sex last, Jessie said, raising an eyebrow, though his face turned a little red. And I didn't see your big deal. Only Claire got a chance to look at that. Shut up, Ben said at last, then barreled on. Just because I don't go scoring chicks all the time doesn't mean I don't get offers. I'm just not, He rubbed his forehead a little and took a deep pull from his drink. I watched my mom get her heart crushed by a drifter. It kind of put things into perspective. That sobered up Jesse's expression completely. He'd had things put in perspective for him too, though not by his mom. That's the great thing about hookers, he pointed out. Everyone gets what they want and no hearts get broken. Everyone wins. Ben frowned thoughtfully. Jesse had a point. And it would be nice not to have to go manual for a change, but Claire. He started to think, then mentally shook the thought away. Claire is my partner and my friend. We're never gonna hook up, and that's just gonna be how it's gotta be. Okay, fine. You've talked me into it. Ben paused, chewing the inside of his cheek viciously. But so help me, if I catch something, I'm not suffering alone. Jesse punched his shoulder with a grin. Luckily, since the last time you got laid, they invented these things called condoms, so we should be fine. Yeah, you've got jokes, Ben snarked out. The sound of the shower turning off silenced them instantly. Euros sound good? He said, hoping to change the subject. He mentally ran through a list of all the foods he could think of that wouldn't unsettle his stomach or make him smell gross, but unfortunately the list was rather short, and he deeply feared nerves would destroy all his other chances. Of course, the problem was, would there even be Euros in the Dells at 10:30 at night? Yeah, sure, I'm good with anything, Jesse said with a shrug, walking over and sitting sprawled on the bed. He glanced at the bathroom door. Claire doesn't eat meat, though. Well, no, she does. She's just not a fan of sausage, Ben pointed out. And if she could get away with getting something else she usually does, selective vegetarianism or lacto-ovo or something, I don't know. He thought back to their little high-end dinner they'd shared back in Michigan, and his face warmed slightly. She had veal once. He paused. And a maple bacon donut? I remember the maple bacon donut. Jesse raised an eyebrow. You know, that's pretty specific for just a friend, he said with a sly smile. Ben scrubbed his face with his hands anxiously. We've been to 5 cities and slept in the same bed twice. I noticed things. I noticed things about you, too. Oh, yeah? What have you noticed about me, then? He said, sitting up slightly. The sudden challenge was enough to put a whole new flush on Ben's face. He sent a silent curse to his mother for inheriting the easiness to lose control of his cool in that way. Well, for one thing, you favor your left side when you're sleeping, Ben mumbled, his eyes everywhere in the room rather than on just him. And sometimes your vowels go wide instead of tall, so you're not straight up English or whatever it is you are. You moved there. Australian, and yeah, Jesse said, tilting his head to one side with a grin. And you call me a creeper who's watching people while they sleep? We had to make sure that you were still breathing and you weren't concussed, Ben said swiftly, his eyes snapping back to him. Of course, Jesse had slept in the same room with him a second time after that, but Ben had been too drunk and doped up to really be paying attention, and none of them had really slept. He remembered listening to the other man at one point when he drifted off for a few brief minutes and turning his head to look back at Jesse's back. What else? He thought to himself. You have a lot of tells, he said. Like when you're unhappy and you're thinking about it, your jaw gets tight and you fidget. Ben smirked a little bit. Or maybe that's just how you always look. Jesse felt his jaw tighten at that, and he quickly loosened it. The bathroom door clicked open, Claire, looking a little pink in the face amid a cloud of jasmine-smelling steam, was twisting her hair between her hands with a towel, another wrapped around her middle. Did you figure out what you want? She asked them both, weaving toward her bag on the luggage rack. Ben felt his tongue swell up in his mouth as his eyes immediately started to track her. He didn't trust himself to say anything intelligent when she was right there, and so exposed, after she caught him in an almost similar taste. Watching Claire as well, Jessie didn't have quite as much trouble. Ben was thinking yours. Works for you? Claire nodded and slung a pair of jeans and a stretched neck sweater over her arm. Should be a greasy place around here somewhere, she commented quickly on her way back to the bathroom. 3 weeks of partnerhood, and she's still forgetting that everything should be brought in with her before starting the shower. Claire was pointedly ignoring them, and the bad timing. Ben shifted painfully in his seat and forced his eyes up to the ceiling, counting the seconds until he finally heard the door shut. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be using the bathroom from now on, he thought to himself, reaching blindly for his drink and taking another deep pull from it. The effects were finally starting to kick in. Jesse looked over at him with a grin, but Ben was looking away, so any vulgar gesture would go unappreciated. Instead, he got up. Can I use your computer? The words "make your own" made it halfway to Ben's lips before they died. Instead, he simply turned the computer towards Jesse, but not before suddenly turning it back and making a few quick clicks to delete some of the history out of his browser window. The last thing he wanted was to give Jesse ammo into how his brain worked. Smirking slightly, Jesse didn't comment, just sitting down and getting to work. He had some entertainment to find that night. Daniel clicked off the television and chucked the remote to the other end of the couch as he stood up. His little studio apartment didn't really have much in the way of a bathroom, just a little stand-up shower, much to his continual disappointment. Some days his body ached so much he would have loved nothing more than to soak in a hot tub until the water went cold. But it was all he could afford on his wages. Such was life. It was just another average evening, save for the weirdness at work that kept creeping up into his thoughts. The two new employees and their questions had left him feeling anxious, and flashbacks to the brief moment in the lagoon the prior week plagued him for the rest of the day. His doctor hadn't mentioned any chemical reactions to his meds, but he had given him a referral to a psychotherapist. Daniel had sighed and stuck the paper into his back pocket, then forgot to take it out when he ran his washing. The paper had been reduced to pulp. He'd call again in the morning and ask the doctor for the number once more. Maybe it was just stress. Stress made people hallucinate, didn't it? He'd never heard of it happening before, but surely he wasn't the first to have something like that happen to him. Work had been strange and money had been tight. It made sense that it was starting to get to him in the worst ways. Daniel flipped on his iPod dock in the bathroom on the bathroom counter and turned on the shower before starting to undress. With a quick hand test, he slid in and shut the little glass door behind him, closing his eyes as he stuck his head under the shower head. It only took moments for the water to drench his hair and make rivers down his back. He concentrated on the heat, willing it into his muscles, hoping to pull out the strain. It took about 10 minutes before Daniel realized the water had started to come up to his ankles. Frowning, he opened his eyes and looked down. Had the drain plugged up again? God damn it, he muttered, bending down to check it. The water was freezing. What the hell was going on? Standing, he tried to flip off the faucet, but it wouldn't turn off. In fact, the water had also gone cold. Dan's eyes widened. Suddenly, the water pressure increased to the point where it hurt, and Daniel yelped, dodging out of the way and making for the door. That didn't open. He tried it twice and seriously considered smashing through the glass. He could feel the water swelling up from the drain beneath his feet. By the time it was up to his chest, he was in full panic and screaming, "Help! Somebody help!" He kicked and banged at the glass door, but it didn't give. There was nothing strong enough in the water to really do any damage. Dan's eyes flew wildly around the space. The gap at the top was too small for him to push through. He was trapped. In no time the water came up and over his head. He willed himself to float, to get up to the top, to keep screaming, but then there was a grip on his ankles, yanking him straight down. All the light and sound disappeared. In the darkness he heard eerie laughter from the water park, and out of that darkness he saw her milk-white hair and skin, and then her eyes opened. Any scream was choked off by the water flooding into his lungs. The GTO eased to a stop in front of a plain brick apartment building, building number 4. Claire, who had donned... Sorry about that. It's thundering outside. Claire, who had donned the sleek gray and charcoal suit commonly used for impersonating professionals, took time for a long breath and looked at Jessie. Pretending to be some college dropout lifeguard was one thing, but this was entirely different. Okay, so, she rolled her lips, trying to figure out the best way to go about this when the idea struck her. Her eyebrows lifted simultaneously. Can you, she made she made a sort of magical hand gesture. Make a professionally looking camera? One that can work? Jesse said, his eyes overly large. He hadn't worn a suit in, well, ever, and he had no idea how he was supposed to act, let alone. He had no idea how he was supposed to act, and it showed, at least to Claire. She shook her head a little and stuffed her keys into the inner pocket of her blazer. I mean, one that looks and sounds like it works. She turned her gaze out to the driver's side window, watching the city detectives leave in exchange for the coroner and his intern who disappeared inside the building. Also, take off the jacket and the tie. Yeah, I can probably do that, he said, shrugging off the jacket before dealing with the tie. Holding it in his hand, he concentrated a moment until he was holding a basic SLR camera. All right, for me or you? Claire smirked faintly at him. You want to be the corporate insurance adjuster? Jessie smiled back. No, thanks, I'll be the dumb grunt with the camera. She smiled a little easier, then slipped out of the car. All it took was a quick run into the apartment leasing office and a few well-practiced glances around to determine just what company she was supposed to be coming from. The complex's manager was already too flustered to notice anything was amiss, besides the dead tenant in 403B. On the way to the apartment itself, Claire suggested that Jessie just take as many pictures as possible and kept an eye and ear out for anything to use. Wasn't really a training protocol for these things. Sorry, hang on a second. It didn't. I'm just gonna pretend that we have an extra 5 minutes on this one, since it's the second to the last anyway. There wasn't really any training protocol for these things, and she couldn't help but feel awkward about it and nervous. Inside, the coroner and his underling stooped over the newly closed body bag. Jesse froze where he stood, staring down. It took a nudge from Claire for him to snap out of it and raise the camera. Don't mind us. Helen Cartwright and with Almost Incorporated, Claire smiled, her business smile at the coroner. Can I get a quick version, or you gonna make me wait for the report? Can I see your credentials, Miss Cartwright? The coroner asked, brows furrowed. Claire didn't miss a beat, though in her head she felt everything below her neck tighten. She looked at Jessie. Kyle, would you mind? Jessie stared at her. Oh, we're right. He grabbed it for his wallet. He flipped it open, revealing what looked like some kind of identification-looking paper. His voice took on a firmer cadence, and he said, There's all the information you need. The coroner leaned in to look at the paper, then up at Jessie with the barest hint of a frown. He ran a hand over the back of his neck and sighed, then turned to look at his assistant before speaking. Victim drowned in the shower, he said at last. Don't know how exactly until we get back to the lab and run a full autopsy, but from the quick look over, the skin was gray and the eyes were cloudy. We found silt residue on the shower tile as well, but we'll need to run a lab to see where it's from, assuming it wasn't just washed off from a trip or there or something. Though why the hell anyone would go swimming outside this time of year is beyond me. Silt in the shower. Claire had already zeroed in on this call when it cracked over the police scanner as drowning, but the details were, of course, not exactly advertised. This only confirmed it. She caught Jessie's eyes and pointed casually toward the shower while she wrote things down on a rather useless clipboard and glanced around at their surroundings. Jessie started... Sorry, page turn. Jessie started fake-taking photos, leaning in close to check things out. There was a heavy smell in the shower that made his stomach roll. That's when she caught the open medicine cabinet and the orange prescription bottles inside. Claire looked down to the coroner, stepping a bit out of their way. Possible homicide? It was possible to drown in a shower, bottom's worth of water, but it was difficult without help. You'd have to ask Detective Hull about that, the coroner answered, giving a nudge toward the lone, uniform-dressed man mulling around in the small space. I just play mad scientist and get paid for it. Claire pushed a small, commiserative chuckle, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. She kept them busy by getting closer to the medicine cabinet to catch the name on the bottles, then headed with purpose towards the hallway. Well, thanks anyway, she sighed, jotting something with a finality on her clipboard, then caught Jessie's eye and nodded toward the main room of the apartment. We'll get the contact info from the manager after a few photos, then we'll be out of your hair. Moving ahead of her, Jessie faked photographing as he went along, not sure when he should stop. When he hit the living/bedroom/kitchen area, he glanced back at Claire. She followed behind him shortly, but stopped with a look at a picture on a cheap IKEA entertainment center. She said nothing, only stared for a moment and ignored the sick twist in her stomach that came with the realization of this nature. Claire looked over her shoulder to Jessie, then nodded solemnly at the photograph. There, smiling with his arm around a blue-eyed redhead, was the lifeguard from the resort break room. Frowning slightly, Jessie followed her nod. Then his stomach dropped completely out. He stood stock still for a while before rushing forward to snatch up the photo. He had to be sure, but he wasn't stopped cold by Claire's hand. But he was stopped cold by Claire's hand on his wrist and a sharp, warning gaze from her. The words "don't touch" shaped her lips, but remained quiet. Jessie stopped, looking at her, then back at the photo before lowering his hand. That guy in the body bag was the same guy they'd talked to yesterday. The same one who'd made him feel sane again. The same one who'd seen what he saw. He couldn't help but wonder if he'd been given the same warning. "Guess I've got a couple days," he said out loud. Ben stared blearily at the screen as he read through the fourth document he'd found. It was really a wonder that he hadn't permanently injured his eyes from having sat up so close so often. "How are you feeling?" came the voice over the phone tucked up against his ear. "Sore as hell," he replied. "But I'll be fine. I'll be okay. I got meds and I'm staying a couple weeks with a friend of mine while I recover. I wish you would come home. Matt could easily get you in to see one of his colleagues. And what would they tell me that I hadn't already been told from the doctor at the clinic?" Ben interrupted, his eyes turning off to the side in his frustration. "Mom, this stuff happens sometimes. I'm fine. It's not as bad as you think." He could almost see his mother's skeptical look. "I'm not trying to nag you, baby," she said after a moment, the tone in her voice shifting to another angle. "I just know you. You're not the type to just sit around and recover." "Believe me, I don't really have a choice in the matter," he grumbled. "Even if I could move, I'm pretty sure my friends would have no problem tying me down." "Ben, if this is some sort of sex thing," Ben had to crack a smile, but interrupted her before she got too far. "It's not. Is Krista there? Can I talk to her?" "You found anything yet?" Jesse said, rushing up from nowhere. His voice was tense, and he leaned over Ben's shoulder before he could answer. Ben jumped, then yelped as pain exploded across his nerves. Ben, are you all right?" "Yeah, Mom, sorry, I saw it up too fast," he said through gritted teeth, staring at Jesse over his shoulder before he shoved him lightly backward. "Krista's over at Amber's house, but I'll tell her you asked for her." "Okay." Ben gestured at the screen and carefully slid out of the chair. Jesse sat, trying to read what Ben had up, but his heart was racing too fast. His eyes couldn't focus in one place at a time. "Make sure you keep altering hot and cold. It'll help you heal faster." "Yes, Mom, I gotta go. Pizza's here. Love you." As soon as Ben hung up, Jesse turned around to face him. "Summarize, all right? If I wanted to read all this, I'd have done it myself." Okay, so get this. The resort is damming up a section of the river so they can turn it into a rapids ride, Ben explained, shoving the phone into his pocket. "They started working on it 2 weeks ago." He paused, realizing Claire was missing. "Where is she? Where's Claire?" "She's in the car," Jesse said with a shrug. "So you think that's why it's going all like Samara on people's asses? Getting what? Revenge?" "Well, I'd certainly be pissed if someone had put an equivalent of a wall through the middle of my house and told me that only this much was mine now," Ben answered. "Sorry, just a second, please." Ben moved his eyes on the door with a frown before turning back to Jessie once again. Had she told him to go ahead because she didn't want to come into the hotel room first? His face heated up a little at the thought. "I'm never going to live this down," he thought mournfully, but was interrupted by a text message alert on his phone. He tugged it out and looked down at the message. He with you? He never gonna get used to his Houdini stunts. Ben felt his lips twist as he texted back. Bouncing around like a bee on crack. Yeah, what's the ETA? Jesse watched Ben with a frown. Yeah, but would you go and drown some lifeguard because of it? He felt his hands give a quake, and he pushed himself to his feet. Fuck, I gotta pee. Ben hummed an answer and as his phone buzzed again with Claire's reply. 10 minutes out. Once again he pocketed the phone, then moved to lean back against the wall, sharing the door. It doesn't know who's in charge. Monsters aren't exactly known for being rational, Ben explained. What'd you guys find out from the call-in? Standing at the toilet, Jesse stared at the water, finding it oddly unnerving. Why'd they have to fill toilets up so high? The guy was drowned in the shower, he said, overly loud. River silt on the tile, so 2 guesses who it could be. After a pause, he added, It was the lifeguard that we had talked to, the one who'd seen her a few days ago. Jesse zipped up. His bladder might be bursting, but he couldn't get anything out. Ben winced on the other side of the door, but for the first time it wasn't because of the ache in his ribs. That was not a good sign, and he could hear the anxiety in that beat of silence between Jesse's words. Don't worry, man, Ben said through the door with conviction. We'll fix this. You're gonna be okay. Jesse opened the door. Fuck yeah, we are, he said, his jaw set. Gonna go down to the lake right now and empty a round into its head. Yeah, 'cause it's just gonna be there on the other side of the door waiting for trick-or-treaters, Ben said flatly. We don't even know where its lair is. It could literally be anywhere. It told me to go to the source. I'm going to the source, Jesse said stubbornly. If it's not there, I'll worry about that then. Jess, come on, Ben reasoned. Don't be stupid. We bust this dam open, we may not even have to go after it. Weren't you the one saying before we should just get the hell out of here? There's no need to kill something if we fix the problem. This thing's followed me home, Jesse snapped. It killed him. Excuse me. This thing followed him home, Jesse snapped. It killed him when he was taking a fucking shower. I'm not going to bust a dam and hope for the best. Unless you want to know what I smell like after never taking a shower again. The room lock clicked when Claire swiped her keycard and pushed inside, closing the door behind her. Jessie got a quick, slightly annoyed look before she started peeling off the blazer and tossing it onto the bed. Got the ammo? Ben asked, carefully stepping around Jessie and moving over to Claire. She nodded and pulled a rattling cardboard box from her bag. You would not believe the looks I got while I was getting these. Lucky for us, we've got an unlimited supply now, Ben replied, casting a look over at Jessie. He knew without asking that the other man would load up and keep firing even after they'd run out of the originals. Jessie gave a try at a smile, but wasn't really feeling it. He looked at Claire. The resort built a dam on the river. With that thing's river. That's why it's getting revenge. Ben wants to bust the dam and make it happy instead of going after it, he summed up. I'm ready for the gun, personally. Claire's brow furrowed slightly when she glanced between the two of them, lingering on Jessie. The fact that he jumped so quickly to that simple plan of action wasn't necessarily surprising, but she had to admit she was slightly unnerved. The thing had threatened him, and he was obviously not used to that, not like she and Ben were. At least let me see if there's a history of deaths like this before we go putting a bullet in its melon, Ben argued. Far as we know, this is the first and only death. Please. Scowling, Jesse shoved his hands into his pockets. If it was one of them, they wouldn't be taking this so lightly. He took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. What if we go there to talk to it? It's got a reason for telling me to go there, finding out what it really wants, he said as evenly as he could manage. Ben looked at him with arched brows, studying his face, then narrowed his eyes slightly at him. After the scene Jesse pulled only moments ago, he somehow doubted the other man would try at the rational angle. The only way he could guarantee the thing didn't get shot would be to go with him, but he couldn't. His memory flashed back to Claire and their first hunt together. Claire, who had had a shapeshifter wearing her face and barely hesitated putting a knife into her heart. He swallowed, then threw his hands out before letting them drop to his sides. Yeah, okay, he said at last. Claire's lips pressed together in a tell of apprehension, but she pushed it from her mind in order to focus. Jessie had expected more of a fight, but he would take it. He turned to Claire. Are you coming or not? She nodded at him, then met Ben's eyes, silent for a beat. Keep looking, she finally said. It's a good drive. And if I can avoid being in a boat, that'd be great, she thought to herself. Yeah, Ben said with a nod, his face pulled downward with a frown. Be careful, okay, both of you. At least we'll see it coming, Jessie said, heading for the door. Claire stood at the steps of an old wooden dock. Sorry, I should have made more of a beat there. Claire stood at the steps of an old wooden dock at the edge of the marina parking lot, giving the weathered sign a good staring at. Boat rental, it said, followed by a number of other services and prices, taunted of an old irrational fear that she was not looking forward to facing. She sighed silently, then looked at Jessie. Looks like we still have 2 hours before they open. Giving an irritated snort, Jessie stared off down the shoreline. We weren't that deep when it grabbed me. Maybe we can get its attention from here, he said, stopping to tow off his shoes and pull off his socks. He then started rolling up his pant cuffs. Claire folded her arms against the deepening chill and the breeze that was coming off the lake. The water looked frigid. Thankfully, this wasn't exactly peak time for people to be wandering around the lake. It was barely springtime and a few hours short of to dusk. Most fishermen and recreational boaters had better things to do. Still, as she stepped up to his side with a careful visual sweep of the area, Claire couldn't help but wonder just what he thought he was going to do. She'd never encountered one of these things before. Winging it just wasn't her favorite M.O. Jessie hissed as he stepped up to the edge of the water. It felt like ice. Just one more reason to hate this thing. Don't worry if it grabs me, he said back to Claire, taking a step in. I can get out of it if I got to. Claire didn't exactly look convinced. And then what? She said. Jessie shrugged. Then we shoot it. I can do it if you want, he said, holding out a hand for the gun. Shoot it. Her head tipped deep toward one shoulder and stayed there, her brow furrowing, but then looked out over the lake. Something about giving him her gun didn't fill her with confidence, but she reached into her jacket and stepped into the water, shoes and all, to hand it over. You realize this thing can basically turn into water, right? Yeah, well, don't drink any then, he said, taking the gun with an attempt at a smile. It let me go once, maybe it'll just say its piece and we'll be done with it. Claire snorted and suppressed a shiver that came from the slow seepage of cold water into her boots. 'Cause that happens all the time, she said, more to herself than anything else. Yeah, maybe I'll have beginner's luck again, hey? He smiled at her for real before wading further into the water. Hello, he called out across its surface. I'm here. Rude to keep me waiting. There was silence, save for the sound of spring birds and wind on the water. Claire's fingers flexed into each other, keeping warm. She supposed this should feel silly, but her instincts were still vibrating in her nerves. Then suddenly even the birds weren't chirping anymore. Faster than what should have been possible, Claire felt two hands tighten like vices around her ankles, the ankles of her boots, and yank her backwards toward the lake, pulling hard. She barely got out of a shriek before freezing water cut through her clothes and stabbed her with 1,000 pin needles. Claire thrashed against the grip, but it only tightened, and her screams were cut off by murky lake water as her head disappeared below the surface. Jessie jerked around only to almost stumble as Claire sped past him under the shallow water. He dove forward with a yell, grabbing for her, but she was already too far. Shoving to his feet, he tried to run after her, but the water was like frozen molasses holding him back. Claire! Claire! He screamed up to his chest. Bring her back, you bitch! What do you want? Taking a panicked breath, he ducked his head under water and yelled, What do you want? But his screams went unanswered. Deep beneath the lake's surface, the Managishi had wrapped herself around Claire's body, pressing her face mere inches away from her as she stared into her eyes. There was no laughter like Jessie and Dan, the lifeguard, had mentioned, only the deep, muted silence of the water. You blocked my river, an echoing voice rang in Claire's ears. The fish won't come. The water grows black. It's your fault. In the murk and gloom, the overly large eyes and ghastly white figure was all Claire could focus on, save that the crushing pressure promised on, save that and the crushing pressure promised on her lungs. It gripped her from legs to shoulders like a tangle of kelp, unfazed by her panicking efforts for freedom. Her heart slammed against its cage, and what little air that remained in her lungs burned like acid the longer it went on. All Claire could think about was, God, please not now. I'll die here. I can never leave for long. Forever. I have been here since this glacier carved through the land. But you ruined it. The Managishi exposed her teeth, feral and furious. You with your poison and your walls and your waste. You should suffer as I have suffered. Her grip tightened exponentially, as though she was determined to wring the remaining air out of Claire's lungs. Break the dam! Her desperate scream bubbled out from her throat toward the surface. Her bones creaked and ground together in the grip, and the cold ceased to matter. All she knew was the spirit's voice and pain. 1 ring, 2, 3. Ben paced around in the room wildly, his free hand continuously moving up through the back of his hair. It's Claire, damn it. Leave me something. Sorry. It's Claire. Damn it. Leave me something to go. There were 3 other deaths had been reported within hours of the lifeguard's death, all with similar circumstances. One person in the bathtub, another found face down in a sink full of dishes, the last in a fucking car wash. He hung up and tried back again, hoping to God that they'd simply had the radio up too loud. It had been the 3rd call, though, and there was still no answer. Jesus Christ, Claire, answer the damn phone, he snarled into the empty room. Jessie appeared at his shoulder, rivulets running down his body and pooling on the carpet around his soggy shoes. It got her, he said, his voice hitching. Ben felt his heart slam into his ribs and his stomach bottom out. And you left her there, he roared, panic and rage screaming through his body. Ben lunged at him, grabbing him forcefully by the shirt, completely blind to his own pain. You get her, you bring her back. It took her into the lake, Jessie said helplessly. I tried to make it come back to tell me what to do, but it didn't come back. Then empty the fucking lake if you have to, Ben shouted, shaking him like a rag doll before shoving him back and pushing his hands forcefully through his hair again. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Move it, he added explosively when the other man remained frozen in place. I don't know what to do. Every second that Jessie floundered was a second robbed from Claire. She might already be dead. Ben quaked with the thought. You're fucking Magneto, you idiot, Ben hollered. Blow up the dam. Make the river move. Just don't stand there and let her die. Jessie stared at him with wild eyes before disappearing, popping up near the dam that Ben had pointed out earlier. He was shaking from terror and cold, but there wasn't much time, and he didn't have to hesitate. He hadn't done anything close to this since he was 11, but there was no way he was failing today. Clenching his fists, he let the terror and anger rage through him. His jaw clenched and his brow drew down tight. The ground began to shake. Faster, come on, come on! He could feel warmth trickling down from his nose. There was a creak, then a massive crack as the dam split down the center and water came rushing forward. Jessie didn't stop. Running along the bank, he started wading in. You got what you wanted. Give her back. Let her go. Claire broke the surface of the lake with the hardest breath she'd ever taken in her life. Sweet, cold air still felt like lava forced down her throat, and her brain felt boiled in its own blood, but she was breathing. Jessie waded straight for her, nearly falling in his rush. For the briefest moment, a silvery shape appeared in the water, rapidly swimming off in the direction of the now flowing water. Jesse's eye snapped to it in an instant, then relief washed away in the anger. He snatched the gun from the belt at his waist and fired until the clip was empty and the gun still clicked in his hand. An inhuman screech sliced through the air as the creature briefly broke the surface, then disappeared beneath the dark waves again. Claire barely registered the gunfire. Exhaustion and lack of oxygen had drained her muscles to the point of uselessness, and anything left was very quickly sapped away from the cold. Weakened instincts curled her fingertips into the fabric of Jesse's shirt. The shivering alone was going to break her apart. Jesse pulled her close, tucking the gun back into his belt. "I've got you, Claire," he said quietly, his hands coming up under her knees to lift her against him. "You're gonna be okay. You're gonna be all right." She got heavier as they got closer to shore, but he didn't put her down. "What happened?" Claire croaked out weakly through the chattering of her teeth. "I've got you. It got you, but I got you back," Jesse said, fighting his own shivering. Reaching the shore, he sat her down gently. "Just one sec, okay?" Gathering some fallen leaves that had survived the winter, he shook them out into a fuzzy brown, mostly importantly dry, blanket. He hurried back to Claire, wrapping her up. "Did you see it? Did it say anything to you?" She nodded and closed her eyes, trying to force the involuntary shuddering down, along with the image. "It was pissed," she paraphrased flatly, pulling the blanket around herself. She met his eyes and hoped they would convey her lack of interest in reliving the event. "What did you do?" Her sentence cut off by a thick, wet cough hidden behind her palm. It made her eyes water. To Jesse she looked so frail and so unlike herself that he was so used to. He lifted her up again. He'd never popped out with someone in his arms before, and now wasn't the time to test it. So they had a long walk back up the beach to the car ahead of them. "I broke the dam, holding back the river, and then I shot it." He surprised himself with how little remorse he felt. Claire allowed herself to be carried for the sheer absence of strength anywhere. Let me try that sentence again. Claire allowed herself to be picked up for the sheer absence of strength anywhere. Every scrape of her energy was going towards breathing normally and keeping warm. She could feel him shift as he walked, hear his words with a slight echo thanks to the water still in her ears, but something tightened her bracing grip on his shoulder, though she couldn't lift her cheek from the other. "You broke the dam." That explained her sudden release, but at what cost? She wanted to force the thought from her mind. The elation from escaping death was starting to settle in. Claire couldn't handle that heaviness on her soul. Claire couldn't handle that heaviness on her soul just yet. "Good job," she uttered, and let her eyes close again, finding an unexpected but welcome comfort in the sound of Jesse's heart under her ear. She just wanted to be away from the water, warm and alive, and she wanted to see Ben. Jessie felt a pang of pride at the words, but just nodded, concentrating on his steps. They hurt at first, but his bare feet quickly grew numb from the cold. When they reached the parking lot, only one other car was there, and it looked like the driver was already on the docks. Jessie sat her down by the passenger door. No way he could open it while still holding her in his arms. "You should give Ben a call while I drive," he said through the shiver. Sleeping was always going to be a problem, Ben noticed. I should have done another beat again. Sleeping was always going to be a problem, Ben noticed. He could either seriously dope up on drugs and crash, risking the grogginess the next day, or he could drink himself into a stupor and risk the hangover. There wasn't really a middle, and he didn't like either option, but he also didn't like the pain. And what if there was an emergency in the middle of the night? Both options left him unable to fight. So he didn't overdo anything. He took 2 pills and enough booze to make his head swim a little, then he tried to sleep. It worked, but his hyper-awareness of the bed not too far away from him kept him from totally dropping out. Claire was still awake. "Hey," he whispered into the dark, hoping that Jessie was asleep or at the very least not paying too much attention. Claire always had nightmares. There came a point in their life there came a point in their level of experience that nightly disturbances were always expected. She let them come, endured them, and moved on normally. Recently, the visions seemed more unrelenting than usual, or maybe there was just parts of her subconscious that were worming their way into the surface, jarred by the changes brought into her life. Either way, sleep seemed far out of reach tonight. Claire recognized that something had to be dealt with, faced, or otherwise worked out of her mind to settle. Unfortunately, her mind was not settled enough to focus on that goal. She turned toward Ben when he called out for her, giving him a sleepy look that said everything that was mirrored right back at her. She sighed through her nose, deflating her chest under the cheap blanket. "Hey, you want to sit on the balcony?" he offered in the same hushed voice. Her eyes flicked from him and toward the sliding doors and the balcony overlooking the resort closed outdoor pool. Then her eyes moved back to him, a faint twist on her lips. "It'll be cold," but her tone suggested she was fine with that. "I'll grab a blanket then," he offered, already starting the slow process of getting back up so he could slide off the bed. The temperature outside was just barely above freezing, and nearly brought a sudden swear out of Claire's lips when it hit her, still warm from the bed. The balcony was bare of any furniture since the resort hadn't put out the accommodations for summer yet, leaving just a wooden rail about chest high to lean on. She shivered once, then forced the natural sensation down to her core, but still shook under her breath. Excuse me, let me read that sentence again. She shivered once, then forced the natural sensation down to her core, but it still shook her breath. Ben slid right up next to her the moment he shut the door behind them, moving so that the blanket draped around both of their frames. Without even the slightest hesitation, his arms settled gently around her waist. Claire's chin twisted in his direction, her lips touched by a soft smile. "Talk to me," he muttered. He murmured. She huffed slightly and looked out over the black Wisconsin night. "No more lakes for a while?" "Agreed," he replied, his lips curving upward briefly. He gave her a slight squeeze, silently encouraging her to continue talking. The squeeze was soft enough not to make much of a difference, but it still tightened her breath a little bit. She made up for it with one that was deeper than normal and leaned closer, sharing the warmth. "So much for our little vacation." She looked up over her shoulder at him, her chin lifted for the height difference between them. Somewhere in the back of her mind she realized subconsciously how much taller he was. "Well, I hope you got some R&R, though I'm not sure how." "No such thing in our line of work," he said quietly. He might have had a chance to lie down, and Jessie might have shown him a crazy good night that first time, but when it came down to the monster and the madness, he'd never felt so stressed and upset in all the years that he'd been doing this alone. He hadn't been able to do anything, and it was terrifying. "From now on, I plan the vacations," he added as the memories of the night he sold his car slowly returned to him. Claire smiled tiredly, but felt a bit warmer for it. "Deal." She leaned a bit into him and closed her eyes. The comfort with his presence was growing less alien as time went on, even if it came with the occasional spike of awkwardness. This, though, was possibly the most comfortable she'd been in several days, even out in the cold. The silence stretched on comfortably between them for a few moments before Ben spoke up again. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked gently. Her eyes opened, only to turn up at him quizzically, though the look he returned made her chest constrict, and she didn't feel so confident. If she was able to be figured out by anyone, Claire figured it would have been him. "God willing," she answered quietly. "I feel lost," she said in her own mind. His arm squeezed her lightly again. Obviously, she didn't want to talk about what had happened, and he wasn't going to force her. He just wanted to let her know that he was there. "I mean, I've lived through worse, right?" Claire felt the need to add that for her own benefit. That it could be always worse ploy often worked, but for some reason this all felt somehow different. She shook her head and pushed back a few blonde flyaways that stuck to her cheeks with the wind. Had she lived through worse, though? It didn't feel like that all the time. Or excuse me, didn't it feel like it didn't? This is a tricky sentence my friend wrote. Didn't feel like it at the time. Claire went quiet for another moment, turning her thoughts inward and ruminating, remembering everything that went through her head when her lungs felt like they were collapsing, being burned away by acid in the need for another breath, the thing that had held her there in that state for longer than should have been natural. She could remember with sick clarity as it forced air out of her lungs, then wrung her out again until she screamed, the water invading her. It felt like an eternity. Suddenly Claire's eyes stung and her face tightened. Ben felt Claire slowly tense up and frown, turning his head to look at her. "Hey," he murmured, turning her gently toward him and looking down at her in concern. "Hey, it's okay. I'm here. We're all okay." She looked up at him with sharp, watery eyes, fighting down the flood, the sting of the crystal clear realization that she'd come so close to the brink of oblivion. The memory of his similar experience with her as the witness returned to her as well, and the pain that came with that. "How many close calls have you had?" she asked honestly, though her voice barely cracked over a whisper. "Too many," he said without a pause. "Especially when I started out, and most of them because I hadn't researched enough first. But that's the nature of the beast, you know?" He moved a hand up to sweep the hair out of her face. "You forget you're made of glass when you're in it to win it." She nodded knowingly, commiserating with him without so many words, but was unable to hold his gaze in that moment when he brushed her hair back. "I don't remember how many times I've prepared myself to die." Just saying those words, Claire felt the burn back in her chest, and it sapped away a lot of the strength just to make those words verbal. "And it's always been the same until now," she added inwardly. She wanted to say it, but didn't have the breath for it. She brought her eyes back up to his face. Ben swallowed hard, caught up in her gaze and the weight of those words. He knew right then she needed him to reassure her, to say something to lift her out of that darkness. "You can stop any time," he said slowly. "But could you, knowing there's people out there who need us, who need to be saved?" Her lips pressed together hard, and she shook her head faintly. She could never abandon this path, but stopping wasn't the question, even in her internal chaos and fear. "Before it had been easy. Terrifying, yes. But I was always able to just accept it, but this time—" Claire felt like her stomach was tying itself in knots, a form of fear itself born by this conversation. But it'd been started, and there was no way she could possibly stop now. She was just finding it near impossible to shape the words. Ben felt the energy shift between them like static electricity or magnets. Something scientific. His brain had started to malfunction, that much was certain. Was she going to say what he thought she was going to say? Did he want her to say it? He visibly swallowed, looking back and forth between her eyes. "I know," he said at last, his mouth a little dry. Me too." He'd felt it back in the vampire nest, on that cusp between life and death. Ben still felt that, felt it. It had been the thing that kept him fighting, even when the pain was so great he could hardly see through it. The faded memories started returning to him in his panic for Claire's life when Jessie had abandoned him in the room, knowing she was drowning and that he could do nothing to stop it. 4 words, 4 simple words he'd spoken, and somehow... Let me try that again. 4 words, 4 simple words he'd spoken, and somehow made sense of everything, of the chaos in her head that wouldn't let her. Claire could read it like a script in the honesty of his eyes. Again she felt the shake in her chest and found her hands lift from her sides and very gently cling to the side of his shirt at each hip. She could accept death and martyrdom before, when her mother was dead and she was chasing the ghost of her father, when no ties kept her tethered to a mortal life of servitude. But now it was different. and that realization brought with it a whole new set of fears. Ben swallowed hard, his heart racing, the sound rushing up to his ears so that he could hardly hear himself think. Not that there was much to think about, really. What was happening now was instinct. Just as he started to lean in, though, a thought finally formed in his head. She's scared. This is a hallelujah moment. She's reaching out because she's scared, not because she wants you to kiss her, you idiot. He licked his lips and sighed, pressing his forehead lightly against hers. I'm always gonna be here, all right? He vowed. I promise. This. It was this that she was afraid to leave behind. That she could feel her indoctrinated system of faith wavering for. This new degree of closeness amplified every strong connection and feeling that brought Claire to her realization, and she was struck dumb with the sheer potency. She'd visualized moments like this since meeting him, but not consciously, not always. But the weight of his brow against hers and that subtle, shifted smell she recognized on a cellular level that was his, and it enveloped her completely. She closed her eyes and forced a slow, shaking sigh. She wanted to kiss him, and didn't banish the thought immediately. It lingered and prickled her nerves behind her jaw, which tightened with the swallow. The memory of her desperateness under the lake was the only catalyst she needed. Claire tilted her chin, her movements choppy and pensive. The touch of his nose against hers pricked another delicate nerve that held her breath tight. But it was nothing to the electricity sparked when their lips finally met. It was only brief, chaste pressure, but exploded beyond Ben's synapses, sending a shiver through him. It wasn't a dream. He could smell her shampoo and that subtle note of her, filling, filing away with every other sensation, the texture of her hair against his cheek, the softness of her mouth, the heat from her body and her breath. His dreams had never been able to recreate a body so perfectly, he knew that from experience. Feeling a flicker of boldness, Ben moved a hand up to her hair, threading through the strands as he pressed a little closer. Claire finally found breath when what little distance that was between them had dissolved. She could feel him tense and breathe against her, the tenderness in his hand that delved into her hair. Her heart pushed itself into her throat, but his acceptance and nearness went hand in hand with the bond they'd formed on top of her complicated, hidden desire. She kissed him again, more confidently, more invitingly, and tightened her grip on his shirt, barely able to register caution for his injuries. He felt the flit of her tongue against the seam of his mouth, and just like that his brain switched gears. The hand in her hair shifted to the back of her head as he eagerly deepened the kiss, the taste of her mouth completing the file in his mind. Hallelujah moment or not, he was, without a doubt, completely smitten by her. They had been drawn together by fate, he knew that now. This had always been meant to be. Every part of it felt right. Until she pressed a little too enthusiastically against him. Then he was unable to stop from wincing and breaking away with a sharp inhale of breath. Claire immediately let him go, though the sudden separation seemed to pull the last bit of air out of her. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry," she breathed, and tried not to feel like her knees were made of marshmallow. Her eyes searched his face for reassurance that he was all right, but she couldn't help the way she kept returning to his lips. They had been so warm. "It's okay," he reassured her in a similar tone, his hands sliding up to her face, each kiss punctuating his sentences. "If it weren't for my ribs, I'd probably crush you to me, and if this is a hallelujah moment, that's okay, too." The subtle crack of humor made her smile against him, a laugh or two on her words. Hallelujah moment? She couldn't help but wonder what he meant by that. Claire leaned her cheek into his hand without realizing the action, and more than once had to struggle to keep her hands feather light where they touched. "Because of the close call," he clarified, kissing the tip of her nose. She wrinkled it by reflex, and couldn't help her hand from wiggling between them to brush away at the tickle, but she was still smiling. It was hard to imagine anything could properly wipe it away at that moment. "Okay, maybe a little." Her cheeks felt warm under his hands with the heat that made up for the purposeful understatement. Claire pressed her brow and brushed his lips again. Funny, the moments when we're most honest. Something inside Ben deflated a little, but he managed not to let it show on his face. Whatever happened would happen naturally. He wouldn't press his luck. Now that the boundaries had been blurred a little, though. "Do you think you can sleep better now?" he asked her quietly. Sleep? Her mind hadn't been able to turn itself off before this, and now Claire doubted she could even slow her thoughts, not for a while anyway. She brushed her hand on his jaw and then through his hair, her shoulders sagging slightly with exhaustion. Claire closed her eyes. "Maybe, if you'll stay with me." The words instantly eased the disappointment straight out of him, and Ben leaned in to press his forehead against hers again, smiling. "My bed or yours?" She smiled against his lip and shook her head delicately. "It doesn't matter." Ben smiled too, and without pulling away from her, he steered them back through the door and toward his bed. It would only be sleeping or possibly lying next to each other, but the most important fact was that she'd always be next to him, and that was all that really mattered. And that is the end of that chapter. And we are just under 3 hours, and I don't want to start another one. So I will leave it there. I It's funny because I haven't actively written anything, fiction anyway, in a while. It's been a few years since I've written fiction. I've done a lot of like academic style writing or like journalistic writing, but I hadn't done a lot of fiction since pretty much when I wrote that, to be honest. Um, Writing with my friends was something I really enjoyed and I miss doing. And I had been approached by both of them individually a couple different times, but it didn't really feel like the right time to pick it back up again. I'm still not 100% sure I can. My schedule is very different from when we had written that. We had a lot more time between the three of us. Um, Friend number one had a child and was living at home taking care of the child well. Her husband worked, I think he was working in a railroad, like a rail station, a train station. I know how to make words with my face. So she was home like all the time. And person number two was in college. So there were times between studying and not having to write papers and stuff. So we had a lot of time to write together, all three of us. And this piece, we all really were invested in this. We tried to start a second one, like a sequel, but we ended up falling behind on it after a while, and it kind of fizzled out. And then stuff picked up again in life, and we kind of let it go. My brain is buzzing. It was a very exciting chapter, wasn't it? So, yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna leave it at that. And I think now is a good time to read out. I hope everybody had a great time. Those who stuck around, I appreciate you very much. I know chat was very quiet, so either everybody's fallen asleep, which is perfectly acceptable, or You're out being busy and doing your little busy things, and I approve of that too. I just appreciate the fact that you all came and shared some time with me. So let me find someone fun to read into. Or calm is maybe a better word for it. It's late enough. I don't want to get everybody all pumped and crazy. Mm-hmm. Let me see, let me see, let me see. Well, I think we're gonna go hang out with Queen Toasty. Do adore me. Oh, piffle. Girly Pop has raids turned off. That's not fair. Why is it that every time I try to raid into these little booger heads streams, it's always turned off? Is it broken? What's broken? Come on. I wonder if it's just Twitch being twitchy. Tee hee. My jokes are so funny. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was gonna mute and I didn't get to it fast enough. Oh, jeez. Fine. Y'all be like that. I'm just gonna have to take us into freaking reef and chill. Alrighty. Well, you know the drill. It's time for us to go and rest. So, for anyone who's still here, I want to again thank you so much for stopping in, stopping by. I want to thank Neff for the raid. Appreciate you, Neff, and I hope you had a great rest of your night. For everyone still sticking around, thank you again for popping in. I hope you all have a lovely evening. Make sure to take your meds, make sure to take a sip of something hydrating. Make sure that you're feeling comfy and cozy, and if you have any fuzzy or furry or scaly or feathery babies, please give them a hug and kiss from me. I will see you all again very soon. I hope you take care. Bye for now.